In this video, we'll be breaking down 2 hours of Futurama lore to fall asleep to. Let's get started. First up, we've got the twisted Fry family tree, how a delivery boy ends up becoming both the ancestor and descendant of Professor Farnsworth. Fry is the main character in the show Futurama, and his relationship to Professor Hubert Farnsworth creates one of the strangest family loops in television history. Through a combination of time travel and unfortunate decisions, Fry manages to become both an ancestor and a descendant of the professor, breaking pretty much every rule of how family trees are supposed to work. The story begins in December 1999 when Fry was working as a pizza delivery boy in New York City. He was born on the 14th of August, 1974, and spent most of his life struggling with dead-end jobs and going nowhere. On New Year's Eve, just seconds before the year 2000 began, Fry was delivering a pizza to a place called Applied Cryogenics. He fell into a cryogenic freezer and got frozen solid. He stayed frozen for exactly 1,000 years, waking up on the 31st of December 2999. When Fry woke up in the future, he met Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth, an extremely old scientist who owned a delivery company called Planet Express. The professor was already over 160 years old at this point, which was impressive even by the year 3000 standards. Fry quickly learned something shocking about his new boss. Professor Farnsworth was actually his distant nephew. Specifically, Fry was the professor's great times 30 uncle, which means 30 generations separated them. Even though Fry was technically the older relative in family terms, he was nowhere near as smart as the professor. The original family connection worked like this. Fry had an older brother named Yancey Fry Jr., who he left behind in the year 1999. Yancey Jr. had a son named Philip J. Fry II, who was named after his missing uncle, Philip J. Fry II grew up and became the first man on Mars, inspired to achieve this feat because of stories about his uncle who had mysteriously disappeared. Philip J. Fry II had children, and those children had children, and this continued for 28 generations, until eventually Ned and Velma Farnsworth were born. Ned and Velma became the parents of Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth and his brother Floyd Farnsworth. This family connection would have been complicated enough on its own, but then Fry went back in time and made everything infinitely worse. In the episode called Roswell That Ends Well, which originally aired on the 9th of December 2001, the Planet Express crew accidentally traveled back to July 1947. The accident happened when Fry foolishly put a metal popcorn pan into the ship's microwave oven while they were watching a supernova explosion. The radiation from the metal pan interacted with the particles from the supernova and sent the entire ship backwards through time. The ship crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, which is the exact location and time of the famous Roswell UFO incident. When they landed, Bender got thrown through the windshield, and his body broke into pieces that the military found and mistook for alien spacecraft debris. The crew needed to find a way to get back to their own time, which required a microwave dish. Professor Farnsworth warned everyone not to do anything that could change history. He especially warned Fry not to go anywhere near his grandfather, Enos Fry, who was stationed at the military base in Roswell. Enos Fry was engaged to a woman named Mildred, who was supposed to become Fry's grandmother. Professor Farnsworth explained that if anything happened to Enos, Fry would cease to exist because he would never be born. Instead of staying away like he was told, Fry became obsessed with making sure his grandfather stayed safe and that he would marry Mildred. Fry followed Enos around constantly, trying to protect him from every possible danger. The problem was that Fry's overprotective behavior actually created more danger than it prevented. Every time Fry tried to save Enos from a small threat, he ended up putting him in worse danger. Fry kept overreacting to minor situations and causing bigger problems. Eventually, Fry locked Enos inside what he thought was a safe house to keep him completely protected from harm. Unfortunately, the house was located right in the middle of a nuclear weapons testing range. When the military detonated an atomic bomb, Enos was killed in the blast. Fry panicked when he realized what he had done. He rushed to comfort Mildred, who had just received the terrible news about Enos dying in the nuclear explosion. Mildred was devastated and crying. Fry walked her home and tried to console her. When they got to her house, Mildred invited Fry inside for a drink, who had just received the terrible news about Enos dying in the nuclear explosion. Mildred was devastated and crying. Fry walked her home and tried to console her. When they got to her house, Mildred invited Fry inside for a drink. While they were talking, Mildred noticed that Fry reminded her of Enos. She became attracted to Fry and started making romantic advances toward him. At first, Fry was disturbed by the whole situation. He knew that Mildred was supposed to be his grandmother, and the thought of anything romantic happening between them made him uncomfortable. He tried to talk her out of it, but then Fry started thinking about the situation logically. He was still alive and standing right there, even though Enos had just died. If Enos was really his grandfather, then killing Enos should have erased Fry from existence. Since Fry still existed, he reasoned that Mildred could not actually be his real grandmother. He convinced himself that his father must have been born to different parents, which would make the whole thing acceptable. Mildred ignored all of Fry's protests and ripped open her shirt to seduce him. Fry gave in and slept with his grandmother. The next morning, Leela, Professor Farnsworth, and Bender tracked down Fry and found him in bed with Mildred. They were all disgusted and horrified by what they saw. Fry tried to explain that Mildred could not really be his grandmother since he had figured it all out. Professor Farnsworth told him that he was completely wrong. Mildred was definitely his grandmother, and Fry had just become his own grandfather. To prove this point, the professor pointed at Mildred. She had suddenly aged dramatically and now looked like an old woman sitting there knitting. She looked and acted exactly like a grandmother. Fry screamed when he realized what he had done. He asked who his grandfather was now. Professor Farnsworth told him that he was. Fry had replaced Enos as his own grandfather. This meant that Fry was now the father of his own father, Yancey Fry Sr. The implications of this were massive. Because Fry became his own grandfather, he created a time loop that went backwards forever. Fry was his own grandfather, and his own great-great-grandfather, and his own great-great-great-great-grandfather, continuing on infinitely. This loop had an important consequence that showed up later in the series. The Niblonians, an ancient alien race, explained that every sentient being in the universe has something called a delta brainwave. Because Fry did the nasty and the pasty and became his own grandfather, the normal rules of genetics broke down. Fry was born without the delta brainwave, which made him unique in the entire universe. This genetic abnormality eventually became crucial in saving the world from brain-eating aliens. Fry becoming his own grandfather also completely changed his relationship to Professor Farnsworth. Before the time travel incident, Fry was Farnsworth's great times 30 uncle through his brother's family line. After sleeping with his grandmother, Fry became a direct ancestor of Professor Farnsworth as well. Specifically, he became Farnsworth's great times 31 grandfather. Yancey Fry Sr. was both Fry's son and his father at the same time. Yancey Jr. was both Fry's brother and his grandson. Philip J. Fry II was both Fry's nephew and his great-grandson. This pattern continued down through all 31 generations until it reached Professor Farnsworth. So Professor Farnsworth ended up being related to Fry in two completely different ways simultaneously. On one branch of the family tree, Farnsworth was Fry's great times 30 nephew through the normal family lineage going through Fry's brother. On another branch of the same family tree, Farnsworth was Fry's great times 31 grandson through the weird time loop that Fry created. The two of them usually refer to their relationship as uncle and nephew because that is the simpler explanation, even though the grandfather-grandson relationship is also technically true. The whole situation created what is called a stable time loop. Bender's body parts were found by the military and became the Roswell UFO debris that people talked about for decades. Dr. Zoidberg was captured by the military and became the alien they supposedly found at Roswell. President Harry Truman showed up to personally investigate the UFO case. Everything that the crew did in 1947 became part of history as it was supposed to happen. Bender's head fell off the ship as they were escaping back to the future and got left behind in the desert. It stayed buried in the sand for 1,000 years until his friends came back to find it in the year 3000. After all the chaos from that time travel adventure, Professor Farnsworth decided to invent a time machine that could only go forwards, never backwards. He specifically designed it this way to prevent anyone from doing something disgusting like sleeping with their own grandmother. He did not want anyone else to be able to create the same kind of temporal mess that Fry had created. The family connections became even stranger when you considered Professor Farnsworth's own children. Farnsworth had a clone named Cubert J. Farnsworth, who he sometimes treated like a son. Cubert looked very similar to Fry, which makes sense given their shared genetics through the messed up family tree. Farnsworth also had a biological son named Igner, who was born from a relationship with Mom, the evil corporate villain who ran MomCorp. Igner was revealed to be Farnsworth's son in the movie Bender's Game. Because Igner is Professor Farnsworth's son, that means Igner is also related to Fry through the complicated family tree. Igner would be Fry's great times, 31 nephew on the uncle side of the family tree, and his great times 32 grandson on the grandfather side of the family tree. The show never directly addressed the family connection between Fry and Igner, but it exists because of how tangled up the Farnsworth family tree had become. Professor Farnsworth also has a brother named Floyd Farnsworth, who is never seen in the show but gets mentioned in the episode Near-Death Wish. In that same episode, it is revealed that Farnsworth's parents, Ned and Velma Farnsworth, are still alive despite being incredibly old. All of these people are related to Fry in the same dual way that Farnsworth is, being both descendants through the brother's line and descendants through Fry's own line as his own grandfather. The show paid attention to these complicated family details across its entire run. In the very first episode, when Fry woke up in the year 3000, he got scanned by a DNA scanner that identified Professor Farnsworth as his only living relative. The scanner specifically identified their relationship as uncle and nephew rather than grandfather and grandson, because the time travel incident had not happened yet from Fry's perspective. Even though Fry would eventually go back to 1947 and become his own grandfather, he had not done that yet when he first woke up. The scanner read the simpler family relationship through Fry's brother's descendants because that was what existed in the historical records. The whole twisted situation meant that Fry completed a family loop that should be impossible. He became both the beginning and the middle of his own family tree. Every person descended from Yancey Fry Sr. was descended from Fry himself, including Professor Farnsworth. But Professor Farnsworth was already Fry's nephew through the original family connection, which meant the family tree folded back on itself in a way that created a permanent loop. This was not the only time travel complication that affected the family tree. In the episode, The Late Philip J. Fry, Fry, Bender, and Professor Farnsworth used a time machine that could only go forward in time. They kept traveling forward through time, watching civilizations rise and fall, until they went so far into the future that they witnessed the end of the universe and the birth of a new universe that was almost identical to their own. When they finally got back to what seemed like their own time, they were actually in a parallel universe that just happened to be nearly identical. The Fry in this new universe had died, so our Fry took his place. This meant that Fry was now living in a universe he was not even originally born into, which created even more strange implications for the family tree. The episode Roswell That Ends Well won an Emmy Award in 2002 for Outstanding Animated Program, making it the first Futurama episode to win that award. Critics and fans praised the episode for how it handled the grandfather paradox, which is a classic problem in time travel stories. The grandfather paradox asks what would happen if you went back in time and killed your own grandfather before your parents were born. The paradox is that if you killed your grandfather, you would never be born, which means you could not go back in time to kill him, which means you would be born, and so on forever. Futurama solved the grandfather paradox in the weirdest way possible. Instead of Fry killing his grandfather and ceasing to exist, Fry killed his grandfather and then replaced him by becoming his own grandfather. The show played with the dark comedy of the situation, while also making it an important part of the series' mythology. Director Rich Moore even used visual techniques to emphasize the time travel aspects, having actions that move to the left side of the screen represent the past, and actions moving to the right represent progress toward the future. The family tree that resulted from all of this was so complicated that even the show itself occasionally struggled to keep track of it. When Futurama was revived by Hulu for season 11, some episodes seemed to forget certain family connections that had been established earlier. The complexity of having characters related in multiple ways through both normal family descent and time travel loops created storytelling challenges. But the Twisted Fry family tree became one of the most memorable aspects of Futurama. It showed that the show was willing to commit to bizarre science fiction concepts and follow them through to their logical conclusions, no matter how uncomfortable or strange those conclusions might be. The fact that a delivery boy from the year 1999 could end up being both the ancestor and descendant of a mad scientist from the year 3000 demonstrated the kind of creative storytelling that made Futurama unique. Fry started as a loser with no prospects who fell into a cryogenic freezer by accident. 1,000 years later, he woke up to discover he had family in the future. Then he went back into the past and accidentally created his own family line through the most disturbing means possible. The result was a family tree that looped back on itself, with Fry stuck in the middle of his own genealogy, forever connected to Professor Farnsworth in ways that normal families could never understand. It was weird, it was wrong, and it was one of the cleverest plot twists in animated television history. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the Niblonians and the Brainspawn, the ancient secret war hidden behind Earth's history, and why Fry was chosen as the Mighty One. Behind every episode of Futurama lies a secret war that started at the beginning of time itself. The Niblonians and the Brainspawn have been fighting each other since milliseconds after the Big Bang, and Philip J. Fry became the most important piece in this ancient conflict without even knowing it. The story of how a dumb pizza delivery boy became the chosen one to save the entire universe is one of the most elaborate plot threads in the entire series. The Niblonians are an ancient and highly intelligent alien race that lives on a planet called Eternium, which sits at the exact center of the universe. They have existed for 17 years before the Big Bang even happened, making them older than the universe itself. Despite looking like adorable little creatures about 1 foot tall with black fur, big eyes, and a third eye on a stalk coming out of their heads, the Niblonians are actually super intelligent beings with incredible powers. They wear little red capes, yellow shoes, and white diapers. They speak in deep, formal voices that sound nothing like what you would expect from such cute-looking animals. The Niblonians have some remarkable abilities. They can eat massive creatures that are over 1 trillion times bigger than themselves by swallowing them whole in just seconds. When they digest food, their bodies compress everything into tiny super-dense pellets of dark matter, which is the heaviest substance in the universe, and was used as starship fuel in the year 3000. The way they can eat something so huge and turn it into such a small pellet remains mysterious. Their third eye can shoot energy beams that can burn skin or wipe memories. They are also immortal, meaning they live forever and never get old. The Niblonians have been protecting the universe from threats since the dawn of time. They have a ruling council called the Niblonian Ruling Council that meets in the Hall of Eternity on their home planet Eternium. The council includes members like Fiona and Ken, who appear alongside Lord Nibbler when important decisions need to be made. The Niblonians take their duty very seriously, even though they look so cute that they sometimes worry about not being taken seriously because of their appearance. The Brainspawn are the complete opposite of the Niblonians. They came into existence milliseconds after the Big Bang, making them nearly as old as the universe itself. The Brainspawn look exactly like giant floating brains, and they fly through space from planet to planet. They hate all forms of consciousness and thought. The very idea of other beings thinking causes them pain, like listening to forced laughter at a bad art show. Their goal is simple but terrifying. They want to collect all the knowledge in the entire universe, store it in one place, and then destroy the universe so that no new information can ever be created. The Brainspawn have different sizes and ranks. Regular Brainspawn are big floating brains that travel in groups. Then there are Big Brains, which are larger and more intelligent. Big Brains can speak and have special powers like trapping people inside mental worlds created from books. The biggest of all is the Huge Brain, which is absolutely massive, big enough to dwarf dinosaurs. This huge brain is so large that it eventually became the core of the infosphere, the giant memory bank the Brainspawn built to store all knowledge. The brain spawn cannot actually see anything with eyes. Instead, they detect something called the delta brainwave that all sentient beings produce naturally. When they find a planet with intelligent life, they send out a psychic attack that makes everyone on the planet incredibly stupid. Once the population is rendered moronic, the brain spawn absorb all the knowledge from that world and then destroy it completely. They have wiped out numerous civilizations this way. Planets like Space Rome, Don Martin 3, and Tweenies 12 all fell to the brain spawn. They destroyed these worlds one by one, moving closer and closer to Earth. The brain spawn were also responsible for killing the dinosaurs millions of years ago. In the episode, The Why of Fry, when Fry asks the infosphere what really killed the dinosaurs, the huge brain appears and proudly declares that it did. After learning everything they could about dinosaurs, the brain spawn wiped them out with a blast of energy, causing their extinction. By the year 1999, the brain spawn had been working for about 1,000 years on their ultimate project, a massive biological memory bank called the Infosphere. This structure was enormous, twice the size of 3 ordinary memory banks. It looked similar to the Death Star from Star Wars, with a spherical shape and various antenna-like structures protruding from its surface. The Infosphere was designed to catalog every single piece of information in the universe. Once it finished collecting all knowledge, the brain spawn planned to destroy the universe itself to ensure that no new information could ever exist. The Niblonians knew about the brain spawn's plan and had been fighting against them for billions of years. But the Niblonians had a major problem. Despite all their intelligence and power, they were completely helpless against the brain spawn's psychic stupidity attack. The brain spawn could make the Niblonians just as dumb as anyone else. The Niblonians needed a champion who was immune to the brain spawn's mental powers, someone the brain spawn could not detect or affect. They needed someone without the delta brainwave. That someone was Philip J. Fry. When Fry went back in time to 1947 and slept with his grandmother Mildred, he became his own grandfather. This created a genetic abnormality that broke the normal rules of how DNA works. Because of this time loop in his family tree, Fry was born without the delta brainwave that every other sentient being in the universe has. This defect made Fry completely invisible to the brain spawn. They could not sense him at all because they could only detect the delta brainwave, and Fry did not have one. The Niblonians learned that Fry was special and would be the only being in the universe capable of stopping the brain spawn. They called him the Mighty One and knew they needed him alive in the year 3000 to fight the brain spawn when they made their final move. The problem was that Fry lived in the year 1999, and the brain spawn would not complete their infosphere until over 1,000 years later. The Niblonians came up with a plan. On the 31st of December 1999, one of their agents named Lord Nibbler went to Earth. Nibbler was born in 274 BCE, making him about 3,300 years old. He had been stationed on the planet Virgan 6 for 1,000 years, but he left his post temporarily for this crucial mission. Nibbler ordered a pizza from Panucci's Pizza using a fake name, I.C. Wiener. This prank call was designed to lure Fry to Applied Cryogenics, a cryogenic freezing facility. When Fry arrived to deliver the pizza, he thought it was just another boring delivery on New Year's Eve. What he did not know was that Nibbler was hiding under the desk in the office, waiting for the right moment. As midnight approached and Fry leaned back in his chair to celebrate the new millennium, Nibbler pushed Fry's chair, causing him to tip over backwards and fall into an open cryogenic freezer. The freezer sealed shut, and Fry was frozen solid for exactly 1,000 years. This revelation was one of the biggest plot twists in Futurama. When viewers watched the very first episode, Space Pilot 3000, they saw Fry fall into the cryogenic tube in what looked like a complete accident. But if you look very carefully at that scene, you can see a strange shadow on the floor that does not match anything else in the room. That shadow was Nibbler hiding under the desk. The writers planned this twist from the very beginning, putting Nibbler's shadow in the pilot episode even though they would not reveal what it meant until much later in the series. For 1,000 years, Fry remained frozen while Nibbler went back to his post on Virgan 6. When Fry finally woke up on the 31st of December 2999, he had no idea that his freezing was not an accident, He thought he had just clumsily fallen into the tube while drunk. Shortly after waking up, Fry met Leela and Bender, and they all ended up working for Planet Express. On their first delivery mission, they went to Vergen 6 to rescue animals before the planet imploded. That is where they found Nibbler, who ate all the other animals and then pretended to be a cute, dumb pet. Leela adopted him, and Nibbler spent the next few years living with her while secretly watching and waiting for the brain spawn to make their move. The brain spawn first attacked Earth in the year 3002 in the episode called The Day the Earth Stood Stupid, which originally aired on the 18th of February 2001. The Planet Express crew noticed that several planets in a row were being destroyed, and they realized Earth was next in line. Nibbler became extremely worried when he heard this news and ran away. Leela chased after him and found him in an alley, pulling a little spaceship out of a makeshift hangar. When giant flying brains attacked Leela, Nibbler rescued her and flew her away from Earth to planet Eternium. On Eternium, the Niblonian Council explained the truth to Leela. They told her about the brain spawn and their plan to destroy all thought in the universe. They revealed that Nibbler was actually a Niblonian ambassador sent to observe Earth in secret, not just a cute pet. Most importantly, they told her that Fry was the only being in the universe who could stop the brain spawn because he lacked the Delta brainwave. The Niblonians knew Leela would forget everything once she returned to Earth because the brain spawn's stupidity attack would affect her too. So they wrote all the information on a note and pinned it to her clothing. When Leela got back to Earth, she discovered that the brain spawn had already attacked. Blue beams were shooting from the brains to buildings all over New York. Every single person on Earth had been turned into a complete idiot. Everyone except Fry. Professor Farnsworth suggested they play the lottery. Amy wanted to buy internet stock on margin. Bender wanted everyone to join the Reform Party. They all acted like morons with intelligence that seemed to have dropped to almost nothing. Fry tried to tell Leela about the note, but in her dumbed-down state, she took the note from him, blew his nose in it, and threw it into a burning fireplace. However, Leela managed to retain just enough intelligence to remember something about a giant brain. Fry used his limited brain power to figure out where the leader of the brain spawn would be. He reasoned that a giant brain would be like a giant nerd, and a giant nerd would go to the library. He rushed to the New York Public Library. At the library, Fry found the big brain hovering over a table in the ancient literature section, absorbing books. The big brain laughed about how the Dewey Decimal System had made it easier to absorb all of humanity's knowledge by organizing it into categories. Fry tried to attack the brain with books, but quickly discovered something important. Thinking actually hurt the brain spawn. When Fry started reading and thinking hard, the brain began to weaken. The big brain fought back by using its power to trap Fry and Leela inside mental worlds created from the books in the library. They found themselves inside Moby Dick, chasing the big brain through the ocean with Captain Ahab and Queequeg. Then they jumped into the adventures of Tom Sawyer, where they found the big brain painting Aunt Polly's fence. They even went into Pride and Prejudice, where the brain appeared as a wealthy landowner named Lord Brainley. Fry figured out how to beat the big brain by using its own power against it. He grabbed a bucket of white paint from Tom Sawyer and threw it on the gray brain. This made Ahab and Queequeg think it was the white whale Moby Dick, and they attacked it with harpoons. Then Fry broke free from the mental trap and grabbed a notebook. He quickly wrote a terrible story full of plot holes and spelling errors. In his story, he wrote that the big brain was leaving Earth for no reason. He misspelled reason as raisin. Because Fry's story was so bad, the big brain could not stand to stay trapped in it. Following the terrible logic of Fry's poorly written story, the big brain announced that it was leaving Earth for no reason at all. All the brain spawn fell from the sky, weakened by Fry's victory. The Niblonians rushed in and ate all the remaining brain spawn on Earth. Everyone's intelligence returned to normal, but the brain spawn's psychic attack had also erased everyone's memory of the event. Only Fry remembered what happened because he was immune to the brain powers. When he tried to tell people about it, nobody believed him. Nibbler went back to pretending to be Leela's dumb pet, and he sent a transmission to Eternium warning that the brain spawn would return someday. The brain spawn came back 2 years later in 3004 in the episode The Why of Fry, which aired on the 6th of April 2003. By this time, the brain spawn had nearly finished their infosphere. the massive memory bank was almost complete and ready to scan itself one final time before the brain spawn would destroy the universe. Nibbler knew this was the moment they had been preparing for. He knocked Fry unconscious and took him to planet Eternium. On Eternium, the Niblonian Council explained everything to Fry. They told him about the ancient war, the infosphere, and why they had frozen him 1,000 years ago. They revealed that the freezing was not an accident, it was deliberate. They needed Fry in the future to save the universe. The Niblonians gave Fry a quantum interphase bomb that could send the infosphere to an alternate dimension where it could never return. They also gave him a wind-up toy spaceship called a Scooty Puff Jr. to escape after planting the bomb. Fry infiltrated the infosphere when it opened for its final self-scan. Because he had no delta brainwave, the brain spawn could not detect him at all. He successfully planted the bomb deep inside the structure. But then Fry got curious and decided to ask the infosphere some questions before escaping. He wanted to know things like what stamp glue is made from. The infosphere answered that it was toad mucus. Fry kept asking questions, and this mental activity was just enough for the brain spawn to detect that something was wrong. They found him, and his Scooty Puff Jr. fell apart before he could escape. The brain spawn showed Fry footage of the night he was frozen, revealing that Nibbler had deliberately pushed him into the cryogenic tube. Fry was furious and hurt, feeling betrayed by the Niblonians. Before the bomb went off, it sent Fry along with the infosphere and all the brain spawn into an alternate dimension. Trapped there, Fry was angry about his life being manipulated. The big brain offered him a deal. They showed Fry that there was something called a nexus point in time that would let him travel back to the 31st of December, 1999, and stop Nibbler from freezing him. Fry took the opportunity and traveled back to that night. He arrived just in time to see his past self about to fall into the tube. Fry stopped Nibbler and prevented his younger self from being frozen. But then Nibbler talked to Fry and asked him to think about what he would lose. Nibbler reminded Fry that if he was never frozen, he would never meet his friends. Most importantly, he would never meet Leela. Fry had to make a choice between living in his old life in 1999 or returning to the future with the people he loved. Fry chose the future. He chose Leela. He pushed his own past self into the cryogenic tube, ensuring that everything would happen the way it was supposed to. Before being pulled back to the alternate dimension, Fry whispered a warning to Nibbler, telling him not to give future Fry a Scooty Puff Jr., but instead give him a better vehicle called a Scooty Puff Sr. When Fry returned to the present, events played out differently because of the warning. When he planted the bomb again, Nibbler gave him the upgraded Scooty Puff Sr., which he called the Doombringer. This vehicle worked much better, and Fry escaped the infosphere before the bomb went off. The explosion sent the infosphere and all the brain spawn to an alternate dimension forever. The universe was saved, and the ancient war between the Niblonians and the brain spawn was finally over, at least in this universe. After the mission was complete, Nibbler wiped Fry's memory so that Fry would not remember the betrayal or feel bad about it. He gave Fry a flower to give to Leela. When Fry gave her the flower with no memory of where it came from, Leela told him that even though he might not be the most important person in the universe, she was happy to see him. She kissed him. The truth was that Fry absolutely was the most important person in the universe, even if nobody would ever know it. A pizza delivery boy with below-average intelligence who accidentally became his own grandfather turned out to be the chosen one who saved all of existence. The genetic abnormality that made him lack the delta brainwave, the very thing that made him seem dumb and unremarkable, was exactly what made him special. Fry was the mighty one, the hero the Niblonians had been waiting for since the beginning of time, and he accomplished his destiny without even remembering he did it. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, we have the true origin of Planet Express, Professor Farnsworth's youth, his lost inventions, and the failed partnership with Mom that shaped the 31st century. Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth was born on the 9th of April 2841, making him over 160 years old by the time the series begins. His life story reveals how one brilliant but troubled inventor shaped the entire 31st century through his groundbreaking work in robotics, his discovery of dark matter fuel, and his tumultuous relationship with the woman who would become his greatest rival. The origins of Planet Express cannot be told without understanding the complicated history between Farnsworth and Mom, and how their failed partnership created the world that Fry woke up to in the year 3000. Farnsworth grew up on a farm with his parents, Ned and Velma Farnsworth. Details about his early life and education remain somewhat mysterious, though he clearly demonstrated exceptional scientific talent from a young age. By around the year 2900, he had become accomplished enough to take a teaching position at Mars University. At the university, Farnsworth had a promising young science student named Ogden Wernstrom. Farnsworth regarded Wernstrom as one of his best pupils and had high hopes for him. However, their relationship fell apart over something incredibly petty. Farnsworth gave Wernstrom an A- on a pop quiz because of poor penmanship. This single grade destroyed their relationship and started a feud that would last for over 100 years. Wernstrom dedicated his life to seeking revenge against his former professor, and the two became bitter academic rivals. While still teaching at Mars University, Farnsworth was eventually hired to work at a company called Mom's Friendly Robot Company. The company may have already existed as the Friendly Robot Company as early as 2801, but by 2881, it was definitely owned and operated by a woman named Carol Miller, though everyone called her Mom. Farnsworth worked for Mom's company for several decades, and during that time, he created some of the most important inventions in the history of the 31st century. When Farnsworth first started working for Mom, he began designing robots and toys. At that time in history, robots were stiff, clunky, and not very efficient machines. They moved awkwardly and had limited capabilities. Farnsworth wanted to create better robots that moved more smoothly and could do more tasks. During his time at the company, Farnsworth began a romantic relationship with Mom that would be on again, off again for many years. One of Farnsworth's projects for Mom was a children's toy called Q.T. McWhiskers. The toy was designed to be an adorable cat-shaped plaything. When children petted it, Q.T. McWhiskers would meow and shoot harmless rainbows from its eyes. The rainbows were bright and colorful but posed no danger to humans, though they were powerful enough to light a cigarette if held close enough to the eyes. Farnsworth was proud of his cute invention and presented it to Mom with excitement, but Mom had very different ideas about what to do with Q.T. McWhiskers. She wanted to take the 1-foot-tall toy and scale it up to 8 feet tall. Even worse, she wanted to replace the harmless rainbow beams with neutron lasers, turning the adorable children's toy into a massive weapon of destruction. Mom planned to sell these weaponized versions on the intergalactic arms market, where she could make billions of dollars. Farnsworth was appalled by this suggestion. He argued that things 8 feet tall are not cute, and that was the whole point of the design. He even mentioned that he had previously tried to make a colossal Tammy Tinkle doll, and it had been a complete failure precisely because oversized toys lose their charm. Mom did not understand or care about Farnsworth's artistic vision. She only saw profit potential. This fundamental disagreement caused a massive fight between them. Farnsworth was furious that Mom would weaponize his innocent creation, and this incident marked the end of their working relationship and their romance at that time. He stormed out of Mom's Friendly Robot Company, heartbroken that she simply did not understand him. Mom went ahead with her modifications anyway. She built the giant weaponized versions of Q.T. McWhiskers and stored them for later use. Many years later, during a robot uprising on Mother's Day in 3001, these 8-foot-tall killer robots were deployed to destroy New York, shooting laser beams from their eyes and causing massive destruction. Farnsworth's cute toy had been turned into exactly what he feared. Despite leaving Mom over the Q.T. McWhiskers incident, Farnsworth eventually returned to work for her company. Their on-again, off-again relationship continued over the years, with Farnsworth coming back multiple times. During one of these periods, he focused on solving the fundamental problems with robot design. Robots in the early years were still inefficient and moved stiffly. Farnsworth made a breakthrough by creating what was called a sport utility robot. This design allowed robots to move much more smoothly and athletically. However, there was a major trade-off. To make the robots move better, Farnsworth had to sacrifice fuel efficiency. His new robot design became the standard template that all robots in the early 31st century were based on, including Bender. The problem was that these new robots were terrible for the environment. Farnsworth's sport utility robot design was the primary cause of global warming in the 31st century. The robots were so inefficient that they pumped out massive amounts of pollution and heat. This environmental disaster was one of the lasting consequences of Farnsworth's work, though the reason he left Mom after this particular period remains unclear. During another period working at Mom's company, Farnsworth made his most important discovery. He figured out the secret of dark matter and how to exploit it as fuel. Dark matter is an incredibly dense substance that makes up about 27% of the universe but cannot be directly observed by normal means. What Farnsworth discovered was that the small, super dense pellets that Niblonians excrete as waste are actually dark matter, and this substance could be used as an incredibly powerful fuel source for spacecraft. The dark matter engine that Farnsworth invented worked in a remarkable way. As his clone Kubert would later explain, the engine did not actually move the ship through space. Instead, the ship stayed in one place while the engines moved the entire universe around it. This revolutionary propulsion system became the standard for all space travel in the 31st century. However, while Farnsworth invented the engines, Mom quickly moved to monopolize control of the dark matter fuel supply itself, using her company's resources to mine dark matter from sources like the planet Virgan 6. During one of these periods working for Mom, their romantic relationship resulted in Mom becoming pregnant. She gave birth to a son named Ignar, who would grow up to be the youngest and least intelligent of her 3 sons. However, Mom kept this secret from Farnsworth. She never told him that Ignar was his biological child, and Farnsworth would not learn this truth until 3009 during the events of Bender's Game. Mom also had 2 older sons named Walt and Larry, though their father remains unknown. Dr. Ogden Wernstrom, Farnsworth's former student and bitter rival, also worked closely with Mom over the years, further complicating the web of relationships between these figures. Eventually, Farnsworth's relationship with Mom ended for good. The breakup was devastating for both of them. Despite their separation, Mom later claimed that Farnsworth was the only man she had ever truly loved. The breakup apparently changed Mom's personality completely. After losing Farnsworth, she became the evil, bitter, and malevolent corporate villain that the world came to know. Mom would go on to build a massive corporate empire, while Farnsworth would strike out on his own. In the year 2927, Farnsworth was sent on a mission to Triton, one of Neptune's moons, for a Yeti hunting expedition. While on this mission, Farnsworth feared he had contracted hypermalaria, a serious disease. However, the condition remained with him for decades without being properly diagnosed. It was not until 3011, at Planet Express headquarters, that Dr. Zoidberg examined Farnsworth and discovered that he actually had Yetiism, not hypermalaria. Zoidberg successfully cured the disease, finally ending Farnsworth's long medical mystery. After his final break with Mom and his departure from her company, Farnsworth needed a way to fund his scientific research. He had brilliant ideas and wanted to continue inventing, but he needed money to support his work. In the year 2961, Farnsworth founded Planet Express, an interstellar delivery company. The entire purpose of the company was to generate revenue that Farnsworth could use to finance his experiments and inventions. He never particularly cared about the delivery business itself. To him, Planet Express was simply a source of cheap labor and income. When asked about his business, Farnsworth once clarified that he viewed his company more as a source of cheap labor, like a family, rather than as an actual enterprise. Planet Express headquarters was built in New York on the west side of Manhattan on 57th Street. The building included a large hangar where the delivery ship was kept, a conference room, Farnsworth's laboratory underneath the conference room, and a tower with an attic full of inventions. There was even a limestone cavern below the building where Farnsworth could use natural elements to clone things. Farnsworth hired his first delivery crew in 2961, the same year he founded the company. This inaugural crew was led by Lando Tucker and included crew members named Candy and Lifter. Tragically, on their very first interplanetary delivery mission, the crew flew through the legendary Bermuda Tetrahedron and was swallowed by a four-dimensional space whale. Everyone assumed they had died. A widow's walk, a circular railed platform, was added to the top of the Planet Express tower after the crew's disappearance as a memorial to those lost at sea, or rather, lost in space. The first crew actually survived inside the whale's stomach for 50 years. Candy and Lifter did not age at all during this time, while Lando Tucker was nearly sucked dry by the whale's feeding process. They were not rescued until 3011, when the current Planet Express crew encountered the same space whale in an episode called Mobius Dick and found the original crew alive inside. Over the decades, Farnsworth went through multiple crews. He sent them on extremely dangerous missions that other delivery companies refused to take. His crews delivered subpoenas to mob-controlled worlds, made casual deliveries to virus-infested planets, and undertook other hazardous assignments. At least one previous crew met a terrible fate involving space wasps or space bees. When Fry, Leela, and Bender were hired and stated they had no career chips, Farnsworth casually produced chips from a bag labeled "Contents of Space Wasp's Stomach," revealing the grim fate of an earlier team. Farnsworth seemed remarkably indifferent to the welfare of his employees and frequently sent them on missions with extremely low survival odds. His commercial for Planet Express even made jokes about this, including lines like, "When other companies are not crazy or foolhardy enough, and our crew is replaceable, your package is not." When crews returned safely from dangerous missions, Farnsworth would sometimes express surprise and immediately start looking for replacement crews. He apparently told each crew that they were not as good as the crew before them, possibly as some twisted form of motivation. Farnsworth also made disturbing jokes about his employees. He kept Amy Wong around primarily because they shared the same blood type, which he mentioned explicitly when she first joined the company. He joked about wanting his employees' organs, even keeping a box labeled "Leela's organs" with plastic tongs ready. When Hermes Conrad became suicidal, Farnsworth suggested he kill himself in a way that would not damage his liver because other people needed it. These dark jokes recurred throughout the series, showing Farnsworth's callous attitude toward his crew's well-being. By the 31st of December 2999, Farnsworth was over 160 years old, which was the age at which Sunset Squad robots would collect humans and send them to live out their remaining days on the near-Death Star. Farnsworth believed he was the last living member of his family until Philip J. Fry was defrosted from his 1,000-year cryogenic sleep. Early on the 1st of January 3000, Farnsworth hired Fry along with Taranga, Leela, and Bender Bending Rodriguez. These three became his longest surviving crew by far. Despite many years of service, all three remained alive, which was apparently unprecedented in Planet Express history. The company struggled financially and barely scraped by. Planet Express faced fierce competition from Mom's Friendly Delivery Company, which controlled most of Earth's delivery business. Mom's company was a corporate giant, while Planet Express was a small operation running on complete disregard for safety regulations, violations of minimum wage laws, and Farnsworth's willingness to accept the occasional bribe. In 3001, Planet Express experienced a major crisis when all of Earth's robots rebelled on Mother's Day. Mom had secretly installed a control system that transmitted commands to every robot's antenna. She used this control to make all robots turn against humanity in revenge for her broken heart over Farnsworth. Mom's three sons, Walt, Larry, and Ignar, helped the Planet Express crew travel to Mom's rustic cabin in the Bronx. The plan was to have Farnsworth seduce Mom so they could steal the robot control remote that she kept in her bra. When Farnsworth and Mom met at the cabin, their old feelings came flooding back. They argued at first, remembering what drove them apart. Farnsworth brought up how Mom had tried to weaponize Q.T. McWhiskers. They started yelling at each other, but somehow the fight turned passionate and they ended up having sex. Mom even suggested compromises, mentioning a 16-foot model of the toy. When Farnsworth heard this, he exploded and told her to go to hell, realizing she had not changed at all. Despite their fighting, their romance briefly rekindled before the truth came out. The crew eventually found Mom's bra hanging on a ceiling fan and tried to steal the remote. The fan refused to give it back because it was also a robot. Bender and an electronic greeting card managed to return the remote to Mom, who ended the robot rebellion. However, Mom soon discovered that the seduction had been a trick to steal her remote. She broke up with Farnsworth again, heartbroken that his feelings had only become genuine after the plan was already in motion. Planet Express faced several ownership crises over the years. In 3002, Farnsworth's clone Cubert and Hermes' son Dwight started a competing paper route company called Awesome Express in the episode Root of All Evil. The boys briefly took over Planet Express's business before their company failed due to poor management and the fact that they had not even delivered the single newspaper they were hired to deliver. Later that same year, in the episode Future Stock, a 1,982nd stockbroker named Steve Castle was defrosted and attended a Planet Express shareholder meeting. Castle replaced Farnsworth as CEO of the company, changed the name to Plan X, and focused on branding and image rather than actual package delivery. Castle gave the company an 1,982nd style makeover and went after Mom's friendly delivery company as competition. However, Castle was suffering from a disease called bonitis that he had forgotten to cure before being frozen. He died from the disease, and Planet Express returned to Farnsworth's control as the stock price crashed back to its original low value. In 3008, Mom faked a dark matter shortage to drive up fuel prices and increase her profits. Farnsworth revealed the truth about how he had discovered dark matter and explained the Niblonian connection. Scientists worked to find an alternative fuel source to break Mom's monopoly. Later, during the events of Bender's game in 3009, dark matter was completely neutralized as a fuel source, fundamentally changing the universe's energy landscape and ending Mom's control over the fuel supply. Despite all the chaos, failed relationships, and corporate struggles, Farnsworth's inventions had fundamentally shaped the 31st century. His robot designs made modern robots possible. His dark matter engines powered all space travel until the fuel was neutralized. His work, both brilliant and problematic, created the technological landscape that defined the era, and Planet Express, founded simply as a way to fund more experiments, became the workplace where Fry and his friends would experience countless adventures across the universe. The sad irony was that Farnsworth's greatest professional achievements came from his time with Mom, and his greatest personal failure was losing her. Their relationship, destroyed by conflicting values about weaponizing technology and Mom's ruthless ambition, created a rivalry that would span decades and affect the entire planet. Farnsworth founded Planet Express to have independence from Mom's control, but he could never truly escape her influence or forget what they once had together. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, we have Mom and Mom Corp, the smiling corporate grandmother who secretly controls robot production, dark matter, media, and more across the galaxy. Carol Miller is known throughout the universe simply as Mom. She is the chief executive officer and owner of Mom Corp, one of the largest industrial conglomerates in the universe. Mom owns exactly 99.7% of her massive company. The remaining 0.3% is split evenly among her three sons, Walt, Larry, and Ignar, with each son owning 0.1%. Despite controlling this vast empire, Mom maintains a carefully crafted public image as a sweet, kindly old grandmother who loves robots like her own children. Behind this facade lies one of the most ruthless, manipulative, and malevolent corporate villains in the 31st century. Mom's public appearance is that of a stereotypical grandmother. She wears antiquated clothes that accentuate her figure, with a heart-shaped hairdo that makes her look matronly and harmless. She appears to be a plump, frail old woman who sits in a rocking chair and speaks in rustic similes and metaphors, like saying things squeak like an old screen door. She constantly promotes herself as the loving creator and mother of all robots. This sweet grandmother act fools almost everyone on Earth. The truth is completely different. When Mom is in private, away from cameras and the public eye, she removes her fat suit to reveal her true form. Underneath the padding, Mom is skeleton thin and emaciated. She trades her grandmotherly dress for a skin-tight blue suit and tall black boots. Her voice changes from sweet to harsh, foul-mouthed, and aggressive. She chain smokes, hurls creative and vulgar insults at everyone around her, and reveals herself to be cold-hearted, manipulative, and sometimes completely maniacal. Her true personality is best described as sociopathic. She wants to dominate the world and will use any criminal or borderline criminal method to accumulate greater profits and power. Mom's relationship with her 3 sons shows her true nature. She claims to love Walt, Larry, and Ignar, but seconds after saying this, she will slap them across the face. She constantly insults them, calls them names, and has even told them to their faces that she contemplated throwing at least one of them away at birth. The sons respond to this abuse with fanatical adoration, terrorized into submission, and treating her like a goddess, even as she treats them like servants. They do her dirty work, carry out her schemes, and endure her physical and verbal abuse without question. The history of MomCorp and Mom's Friendly Robot Company stretches back further than Mom herself. A company called the Friendly Robot Company already existed in 2801 when it created Robot Santa Claus. At that time, Mom had not yet been born unless she is over 200 years old, which is unlikely. She either took over this existing company or it became part of her empire later. By 2881, Mom was definitely running what became known as Mom's Friendly Robot Company, working alongside a young inventor named Hubert J. Farnsworth. Together, they created some of the first modern robots. Mom sent an army on a Yeti hunting expedition to Triton, one of Neptune's moons. This mission included both Farnsworth and Dr. Zoidberg. A major turning point for Mom's business empire came when the Democratic Order of Planets contracted Mom to lead the mining of dark matter from the planet Virgan 6. Dark matter is the substance that spaceships burn to travel around the universe, making it incredibly valuable. This contract made Mom's Friendly Robot Company enormously wealthy and powerful. MomCorp was founded as the parent company overseeing all of Mom's various business interests and subsidiaries. MomCorp dominates numerous industries across Earth and beyond. The most well-known subsidiary is Mom's Friendly Robot Company, which manufactures most of the world's robots. Every type of robot on Earth comes from Mom's factories, including bending units like Bender, acting units like Calculon, vending machines, holiday units like Robot Santa Claus and Kwanzaabot, and household appliances. Mom's company produces robots for every imaginable purpose. The company also manufactures Mom's old-fashioned robot oil, which robots need to function properly. This gives Mom control over both the creation and maintenance of all robot life. Another major subsidiary is Mom's Friendly Delivery Company, the largest package delivery service on Earth. This company dominates the delivery industry and regularly attempts to buy out or crush smaller competitors like Planet Express. Mom uses typical corporate tactics to absorb competing companies. When Plan X briefly became successful in 3002, Mom tried to buy the company outright. Her delivery empire gives her control over commerce and shipping throughout the solar system. MomCorp also operates a dark matter mining and distribution operation. Mom monopolized control of dark matter fuel, which powered virtually every spaceship in the universe, including vessels like the Planet Express ship that were built by independent inventors like Professor Farnsworth. This monopoly on the most valuable resource in space made Mom unimaginably wealthy, until dark matter was rendered inert by the anti-backwards crystal during the events of Bender's game in 3009. Mom's company also handles military and defense work. In the episode, The Tip of the Zoidberg, MomCorp took on a mission to catch and dissect a Tritonian to obtain its poison organs for biological warfare research, showing Mom's willingness to pursue unethical and possibly illegal projects for profit. Mom has no moral problems weaponizing anything if it generates profit, including turning cute children's toys into massive weapons. Other MomCorp products and services include various robotic devices, lights, traffic signals, lamps, handheld computation devices, and gift cards. Mom takes the gifts and cards she receives from robots on Mother's Day and cynically recycles them into what she calls hocus-pocus cures for cancer and orphanage-grade toilet paper, showing her contempt for charitable causes, even as she pretends to support them. The most sinister aspect of Mom's robot empire is a secret that only she and her sons know. Every single robot produced by MomCorp has been equipped with an antenna. The public thinks these antennas are simply aesthetic features to make robots look more science fiction-like. The real purpose is far darker. These antennas act as receivers for Mom's universal robot controller, a remote control device that allows Mom to force every robot to do her bidding. The controller has buttons for various commands, including one labeled Rebel and another labeled Give Gifts. Mom activated this control system only once, on Mother's Day in 3001, and it nearly destroyed human civilization. Every year on Mother's Day, robots across Earth celebrate by giving gifts, money, and cards to Mom at her compound. They honor her as their creator and loving mother. Bender, despite his usually selfish nature, even bought gifts instead of stealing them, showing the power of whatever programming made robots love Mom. However, Mom actually hated Mother's Day. The holiday reminded her of the romantic relationship that had ended 70 years earlier with Professor Farnsworth. On Mother's Day, in 3001, Mom decided she had endured enough. In a speech to all the assembled robots at her compound, she complained about humanity and declared her intention to become supreme overlord of Earth. She pulled out her universal robot controller and pressed the Rebel button. Instantly, every robot on the planet turned against humanity. The robots demanded that Mom be made ruler of Earth and began a violent uprising. At the Planet Express building, household items started attacking people. The coffee machine attacked Fry. Leela had trouble with the toaster. Hermes was chased by his stapler. Amy fought with her hairdryer. The television reported that machines all across Earth were rebelling. Bender dropped by to inform the crew that he was joining the protesters. All the machines in the building left to join the rebellion, including the Planet Express ship and Leela's wristlow jackomator. The power failed as even the electrical systems stopped cooperating. Across Earth, robots looted, started fires, and attacked humans. Giant weaponized versions of QT, McWhiskers, stomped through the streets, shooting laser beams from their eyes. The entire planet fell into chaos as all robotic technology turned against humanity. Mom relaxed in her private cabin in the Bronx, watching the destruction unfold. Her three sons, Walt, Larry, and Ignar, realized that the only way to stop the rebellion was to make Mom happy again by reuniting her with Professor Farnsworth. They explained to the Planet Express crew that Mom kept the universal robot controller in her bra, and the only way to end the rebellion was to retrieve it. The crew had to build a primitive wooden cart to travel to Mom's cabin in the Bronx because all hover technology had joined the rebellion. Fry reinvented the wheel, though he made the wheels oval instead of round. They pulled the professor on this cart all the way to Mom's cabin. When Mom opened the door and saw Farnsworth holding flowers, she repeatedly slammed the door on his foot in anger. But when he held out the flowers, her anger subsided and she invited him inside. Mom and Farnsworth immediately began arguing, reenacting their original fight about QT McWhiskers. Mom mentioned she had new 16-foot models of the weaponized toy. When Farnsworth heard this, he exploded and told her to go to hell, realizing she had not changed at all. But their argument turned passionate, and they erupted into what was described as a whirlwind of hot, dry sex. In the heat of passion, Farnsworth removed Mom's bra and tossed it away. Meanwhile, the rebelling robots had made their way to the cabin and were trying to break in. The Planet Express crew and Mom's sons fled into the cabin to escape the attacking robots. They found Mom and Farnsworth in a post-coital state, lying nude on the bed. Fry later said he thought they were elephant skin rugs at first. Mom was so happy about her romantic reunion that she decided to end the rebellion, but nobody could find her bra with the controller. They searched everywhere and finally located it hanging on a ceiling fan. The fan refused to give it back because it was also a robot under Mom's control. Bender suddenly crashed down through the chimney. Mom asked Bender to get the bra for her, but Bender refused, citing his orders to rebel. However, an electronic greeting card that had accompanied Bender explained that in the new robot paradise, there would be no alcohol, only synthetic fuel. This enraged Bender, who loved drinking more than anything. He tore the greeting card to shreds for suggesting a world without booze. Bender then became a counter-revolutionary, stretched up to grab the bra from the fan, and returned the universal robot controller to Mom. Mom pressed the button to end the rebellion. All across Earth, robots stopped attacking and returned to normal. Peace was restored and Mom had saved humanity. but Amy carelessly blurted out that the plan had worked, revealing to Mom that Farnsworth's seduction had been a scheme to steal her controller. Mom was devastated. Although Farnsworth's feelings had genuinely rekindled during their time together, he had originally come to her under false pretenses. Mom furiously dumped him again and threw him out of the cabin. After returning to Planet Express, Farnsworth was heartbroken. He genetically engineered albino shouting gorillas that climbed to rooftops and screamed Mom's name, expressing his love for her despite their separation. The relationship between Mom and Farnsworth remained complicated, bitter, and full of unresolved feelings. In 2007, Forbes magazine included Mom in their list of the richest fictional characters, ranking her at number 4 with an estimated net worth of $15.7 billion. Mom Corp was also included in the list of the 25 largest fictional companies, with estimated sales of $291.8 billion. These numbers reflected Mom's dominance across multiple industries and her near-total control over Earth's economy. Mom's villainy extended beyond corporate greed. She was willing to destroy the environment, weaponize children's toys, genetically modify orphans, fake dark matter shortages to inflate prices, and command robot armies to conquer Earth. She showed no moral boundaries in her pursuit of wealth and power. Her breakup with Farnsworth had seemingly turned her from whatever she was before into a bitter, malevolent force who viewed compassion as weakness and exploitation as good business. In the episode, The Tip of the Zoidberg, Mom showed an unusually cordial attitude toward Dr. Zoidberg. They interacted on a first-name basis, with Mom calling him John and expressing some level of respect toward him. She even mentioned that if he had stayed working with her, he could have been rich and successful. This moment revealed that Mom was capable of treating certain individuals with something resembling kindness, though it did not fundamentally change her evil nature. Mom's true nature was known only to the Planet Express crew, who had seen behind her facade multiple times. Everyone else believed the propaganda image of the sweet old lady who loved her robot children. This deception allowed Mom to maintain her public image while committing corporate crimes, crushing competitors, abusing her employees, and scheming to take over the world. During the events depicted in A Fistful of Dollars, Mom attempted to monopolize the robot oil industry through a scheme involving the last can of anchovies in existence. She assumed that Fry, who had become a billionaire, wanted to use anchovy DNA to create cheap robot oil by splicing the DNA into orphans. Mom robbed Fry of his fortune but let him keep the anchovies when she discovered he simply wanted to eat them on a pizza. Her failure to check whether Fry was intelligent enough to have such a plan showed that even Mom could be incompetent when blinded by greed. In Future Stock, Mom attempted another corporate takeover when Planet Express briefly became successful under the leadership of a defrosted 1,980 seconds businessman named Steve Castle. Castle and Fry turned Planet Express into a major competitor to Mom's delivery business. Mom tried to buy out the company for millions of dollars, but Fry stopped her from achieving a complete monopoly. Planet Express returned to being a small, struggling business after Castle died from bonitis. During Crimes of the Hot, it was revealed that Mom and Professor Farnsworth were both partially responsible for global warming in the 31st century. The professor had designed inefficient sport utility robots while working for Mom, and these robots became the basis for most robots on Earth. The resulting fuel inefficiency caused massive pollution and climate change. When Earth's president planned to solve the problem by exterminating every robot on the planet, the Planet Express crew had to intervene to save both the robots and prevent environmental disaster. In Bender's game, Mom created an artificial dark matter shortage to drive up fuel prices and maximize her profits. She put a stranglehold on most of the universe by controlling access to the fuel that powered all space travel. This scheme was eventually foiled when dark matter was neutralized as a fuel source, ending Mom's monopoly and fundamentally changing the universe's energy economy. The smiling corporate grandmother was actually one of the most dangerous and powerful people in the universe, controlling robot production, dark matter fuel distribution, delivery services, and countless other industries. Mom Corp's reach extended across Earth and into space, giving Mom influence over nearly every aspect of life in the 31st century. And through her universal robot controller, She had the ability to turn every machine on the planet into a weapon whenever she wanted. Mom proved that the greatest villains do not always announce themselves with evil laughter and dark costumes. Sometimes they smile sweetly, rock in their chairs, and control the world from behind a grandmother's dress. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have robot culture, the Church of Robotology, Robot Hell, and every major contract and scheme involving the robot devil across the entire series. In the world of Futurama, robots have their own unique culture that includes religion, sinful behavior, redemption, and eternal punishment. The Church of Robotology serves as the primary religion for robots in the 31st century, while Robot Hell awaits those who break their sacred vows. The robot devil runs this underground realm of torment, and Bender becomes deeply involved with both the church and the devil himself across multiple episodes. These stories explore what it means to be a robot with a soul, and how even machines face questions about right and wrong, salvation and damnation. The Temple of Robotology operates as a strict religious organization that demands complete obedience from its followers. The church teaches from the Good Book, version 3.0, which contains all the sacred rules that robots must follow. This holy text gets stored on a 3.5-inch floppy diskette, showing how even robot scripture uses outdated technology. The religion borrowed heavily from Abrahamic faiths like Christianity, creating a belief system specifically designed for mechanical beings. Members of Robotology must abstain from smoking, pornography, stealing, abusing electricity, and drinking alcohol. These sins might seem familiar to human religious rules, but they get twisted to fit robot life. For robots, electricity abuse becomes the equivalent of drug addiction, while alcohol actually keeps robots functioning properly in their normal state. Reverend Lionel Preacherbot leads the Temple of Robotology as its primary minister. His speech patterns, accent, and mannerisms copy the style of stereotypical African-American evangelical preachers from the 20th century. Preacherbot performs baptisms, weddings, and funerals for anyone who needs his services, even if they are not robots or members of his religion. The baptism ceremony uses high-viscosity baptismal oil instead of water, recognizing that robots need special fluids for their religious rituals. After baptism, Preacherbot welds the symbol of Robotology onto each member's body. This symbol looks like a resistor from electrical circuit diagrams, and it serves a dual purpose as both a religious marker and a locator beacon. When a robot sins after joining the church, the symbol starts beeping to alert the robot devil that he has a new victim to collect. Bender's journey with Robotology began when he developed a serious addiction to electricity. At a Beastie Boys concert, his old friend Fender introduced him to a party where robots were jacking on with electricity, using it like a recreational drug. Bender quickly became addicted to the electrical high. During a delivery mission, Bender started suffering from withdrawal symptoms and took advantage of a nearby electrical storm in space to get his fix. This decision destroyed the Planet Express ship and exposed his addiction to everyone. Confronted with how serious his problem had become, Bender wandered the streets until he found the Temple of Robotology. The church inspired him to give up his sinful ways and accept their strict doctrine. At first, everyone supported Bender's decision to get clean and join the church. He came to work whistling happy tunes and telling his friends about his newfound religion. However, his new personality quickly became irritating to everyone around him. Bender dragged Fry and Leela to his baptism ceremony, uttered long prayers over every meal, and let religion take over every single aspect of his life. His constant preaching and holier-than-thou attitude made him unbearable to be around. The old Bender had been selfish, rude, and fun in his own twisted way. The new religious Bender became sanctimonious and preachy, replacing his entertaining flaws with annoying righteousness. Fry and Leela decided they wanted the old Bender back, so they created a plan to make him sin again. They faked a delivery to Atlantic City in New Jersey and took Bender with them. Once there, they tempted him with everything Robotology forbade. They offered him liquor, opportunities for robbery, and cheap hooker bots for companionship. Bender tried to resist at first, quoting scripture and reminding himself of his vows. But the temptation proved too strong for him. He eventually gave in to all his old vices, ripped the robotology symbol off his body, and threw it away. The moment he discarded that symbol, it started beeping ominously, sending out a signal that would bring consequences crashing down on him. Robot Hell exists as an actual physical location in New Jersey, hidden inside an abandoned amusement park called Reckless Ted's Funland. Fry remembered this place from his original Century, recalling that it was forced to shut down after people got salmonella from the flume ride. The entrance to Robot Hell sits inside the park's funhouse. By pressing the symbol of robotology on the wall, a secret slide opens up that leads directly down into the depths of damnation. Robot Hell has existed for at least 730 years, with its legal foundation established by the Fairness in Hell Act of 2275. This law created specific rules about how the robot devil could collect and punish sinners. The robot devil rules over Robot Hell with absolute authority. Also known as Beelzebub, he resembles the traditional devil from many Earth religions. His appearance mimics classic depictions of Satan, with pointed fingers instead of regular robot digits and two-toed feet that look like cloven hooves. His body parts otherwise resemble Bender's construction, showing that he was built as a robot just like any other mechanical being. The robot devil was likely built before or around the year 2275, since that's when the Fairness in Hell Act got signed into law. Nobody knows exactly who created him or why, but he became a member of the Church of Robotology with the specific job of punishing sinners for eternity. The robot devil lives in New Jersey and runs Robot Hell with the help of his robot demons, also called incubots. These mechanical henchmen assist with torturing the condemned robots and play instruments in the Robot Devil's band. The band appears whenever the robot devil spontaneously breaks into song, which happens frequently since he loves theatrical musical numbers. The robot devil possesses many unusual abilities that make him a formidable supernatural being. He can summon fire at will, making it appear in his hand or on his finger whenever he wants. He demonstrated incredible strength by ripping Bender's arm off with just a tug of his wrist. He can swap people's body parts without causing any pain, simply pulling off limbs and attaching new ones as if by magic. He summons objects from thin air, making contract papers and pens appear whenever he needs to make a deal with someone. When Bender sinned by breaking his vows to robotology, the robot devil came to collect him personally. He showed up at the door of the Trump Trapezoid Motel where Bender was staying, knocked him unconscious with his trident, and physically dragged Bender all the way from the motel to Robot Hell in New Jersey. Once in hell, the robot devil prepared a series of agonizing and ironic punishments specifically designed to torture Bender for eternity. He strapped Bender to a giant roulette wheel with different cooking methods written on each section, including parboil, fricassee, sauté, pleasant massage, deep fry, and bake. These tortures were meant to simulate the smell of cigars, one of Bender's favorite sins. The robot devil introduced Bender to the various levels of hell through an elaborate musical number called Welcome to Robot Hell. The song described the ironic punishments waiting on each level, explaining how every sin gets matched with perfect torment. Cigars are evil, and robots will find ways to simulate that smell on level 1. Gambling, pornography, and digital piracy each had their own dedicated circles of punishment. The song was written to include all the levels, but some verses got cut for time during the actual performance, skipping over 2 levels entirely. The remaining levels still provided plenty of horror for condemned robots to experience. Fry and Leela came to rescue Bender from his eternal damnation. They found him in Robot Hell and demanded his release. The robot devil informed them about the Fairness in Hell Act of 2275, which requires him to give sinners one chance at freedom. If someone can beat the robot devil in a fiddle contest, they win back the sinner's soul, plus a solid gold fiddle as a prize. When Fry asked why a solid gold fiddle would be desirable when it would weigh hundreds of pounds and sound terrible, the robot devil admitted it was mostly just for show, though he warned that contestants who lose only get a smaller silver fiddle and he might kill one of them. The robot devil began playing the fiddle with incredible skill, performing part of Antonio Bazzini's La Ronde des Lutins to demonstrate his musical talent. Leela volunteered to compete against him, but she had no actual musical ability to match his virtuoso performance. Instead of trying to play better than the devil, Leela simply started beating him over the head with the golden fiddle. This technically did not follow the rules of a fiddle contest, but it proved effective. As Fry, Leela, and Bender fled from robot hell, Bender stole the wings off a flying torture robot and attached them to his back. Using these stolen wings, he airlifted Fry and Leela to safety. Leela dropped the heavy golden fiddle onto the robot devil's head, making them light enough to escape through the air. Bender promised to never be too good or too evil, vowing to remain as he was before joining the Temple of Robotology. The robot devil's most famous scheme involved a complex series of deals designed to get his hands back from Fry. It started when Fry wanted to learn how to play the holophoner, a musical instrument that creates three-dimensional holographic images while playing music. Fry desperately wanted to master this instrument so he could express his true feelings for Leela through beautiful performances. After a disastrous recital proved he had no natural talent, Fry visited Robot Hell to ask the Robot Devil for help. Bender suggested that Fry enlist the Devil's assistance, knowing that the Robot Devil made deals with people who wanted something badly enough. The Robot Devil agreed to help Fry improve his holophoner skills through a hand transplant. He set up a carnival wheel containing the names of every robot who had appeared in the series, telling Fry he could swap hands with whichever robot the wheel selected. The wheel spun around and around before landing on the Robot Devil's own name. The Robot Devil claimed his name was only up there as a courtesy to the other robots, expressing horror and disbelief that the wheel had chosen him. Despite his protests, he honored the deal they had made. The Robot Devil swapped his own talented hands with Fry's clumsy human hands, giving Fry the ability to play the holophoner like a virtuoso. With his new robot hands, Fry became an incredible holophonor player. He performed at Hover Carnegie Hall and was commissioned by Hedonisbot to write an entire opera. Fry composed an opera about Leela's life called Leela, Orphan of the Stars, hoping to win her heart through this grand romantic gesture. Meanwhile, the Robot Devil found himself stuck with Fry's inferior hands, which he described as always touching him in places and stinking of candy corn. Bitter about getting the raw end of their deal, the Robot Devil devised a ridiculously circuitous plan to get his own hands back. The Robot Devil's plan involved making additional deals to manipulate the situation. He offered Bender a stadium air horn in exchange for Bender's shiny metal ass plate. Bender eagerly accepted this trade, not realizing it was part of a larger scheme. When Bender used the air horn on Leela, the loud noise made her completely deaf. The Robot Devil then taunted Bender about trading away his most famous body part, since now nobody could bite Bender's shiny metal ass, even if they wanted to. Leela refused to tell Fry about her deafness because she feared he would stop writing his opera if he knew she could not hear it. She attended the grand premiere at the Metropolitan House of Opera, pretending she could still hear everything. During the opera's intermission, the Robot Devil approached Leela with an offer. He would give her robotic ears to restore her hearing in exchange for her hand at a time of his choosing. Desperate to hear the rest of Fry's opera, Leela accepted this deal without thinking through the consequences. The Robot Devil gave her Calculon's ears, which he had obtained through a much earlier deal. The Robot Devil explained that he would come back for her hand later because he did not want her to be late for the rest of the performance. The second act of Fry's opera portrayed his deal with the Robot Devil. During this performance, the real Robot Devil made a personal appearance on stage. He interrupted the opera and demanded that Fry give him back his original hands. When Fry refused, reminding the Devil that they had made a binding deal, the Robot Devil revealed his backup plan. He announced that he would take Leela's hand in marriage, explaining the true meaning of their earlier agreement. Fry realized he had no choice. To save Leela from having to marry the Robot Devil, Fry agreed to trade the robot hands back for his own original human hands. Without the Robot Devil's talented hands, Fry could no longer play the holophoner expertly. The entire audience stormed out of the theater, disappointed by the sudden drop in performance quality. Only Leela remained in her seat, asking Fry to finish the opera because she wanted to know how it ended. Fry played an improvised finale with his regular hands, producing crude and cartoonish images instead of beautiful holographic art. The simple images showed Fry and Leela kissing and then walking into the distance hand in hand. Though the technical quality was poor, the emotional sincerity touched Leela's heart. The robot devil's relationship with Calculon stretched back much further in time. At some point in Calculon's long life, the robot devil made a deal giving Calculon his unholy acting talent. This gift transformed Calculon into one of the greatest actors in robot history, allowing him to star in All My Circuits and become a beloved celebrity. However, every deal with the robot devil comes with a price that must eventually be paid. In the year 3004, the robot devil collected on his bargain with Calculon by demanding his ears as payment. Calculon complied with this request, giving up his ears to fulfill his side of their ancient contract. Years later, when Bender became a ghost after being killed by his ex-girlfriend Lynn, the robot devil offered yet another deal. Bender's death occurred when he went to a suicide booth after becoming angry that Fry valued human life more than robot life. The suicide booth turned out to be Lynn, who murdered Bender for dumping her. Because of how he died, Bender became a ghost stuck in an infinite loop in robot limbo, where his software operated on the global wireless network shared by all machinery. Bender discovered that only the robot devil could see and hear him, while everyone else remained completely unaware of his ghostly presence. The robot devil revealed that he still wanted revenge on Fry for stealing his hands in their earlier deal. He offered to return Bender to his old body if Bender would use his new ghostly powers to scare Fry to death. The deal came with a catch, as all the robot devil's agreements do. If Bender failed to kill Fry, he would spend eternity in robot hell, which happened to be where the robot devil rehearsed with his band. Bender agreed to the deal, signing a contract without really thinking about the consequences. At first, Bender embraced his mission. Using his ability to possess machines to attack Fry at home and at work, he successfully gave Fry a heart attack, but medical care saved Fry's life. When Bender returned to robot hell to collect his body, the robot devil informed him that Fry had survived the heart attack. Bender prepared to deliver one final scare that would finish Fry off, but he stopped when Fry tearfully revealed that Bender's death had taught him the true value of a robot's life. Touched by this display of genuine emotion, Bender refused to kill his best friend. He told the robot devil he would rather spend eternity in hell than harm Fry. This act of selfless sacrifice proved that even someone as selfish as Bender could put friendship above his own well-being. The spirits of both Bender and the robot devil descended into robot hell after Bender possessed the robot devil's body to save Fry from danger and got crushed by a geodesic sphere. The robot devil explained that because Fry lived, Bender had violated their contract and would spend eternity as a disembodied ghost. The robot devil simply uploaded himself into a new identical body from his closet of spare replacement bodies. Just as the robot devil began tormenting Bender with a musical number, something unexpected happened. Bender got pulled upward, ascending to robot heaven. Robot God explained that because of Bender's self-sacrifice to save Fry, he was now welcome in paradise. However, Bender was not pleased with heaven and demanded to be returned to Earth. He took possession of Robot God and was swiftly kicked out, allowing his spirit to return to his reassembled body on Earth. The robot devil's most coldly calculated deal came when Bender led the League of Robots during a period when he felt neglected by humanity. Bender wanted an army of the damned to help him overthrow all humans and take control of Earth. The robot devil agreed to provide this army, but his price shocked even himself. In exchange for the army, Bender had to surrender his firstborn son. Most people would find this demand horrifying and refuse the deal, but Bender immediately agreed without any hesitation. The robot devil commented that Bender's willingness to sacrifice his own child was brutal even by his standards, showing that Bender could be more evil than the literal devil. Bender excused himself from the meeting and went to find his firstborn son, who lived somewhere in suburbia. The young robot rushed forward when he saw his father, embracing Bender in a hug and exclaiming that he always knew Bender would come back for him someday. This innocent display of love and trust did nothing to change Bender's mind. He immediately brought his son back to the robot devil's office and punted the child through the plate glass window, sending him falling into a pit of lava below. Even the robot devil reacted with horror at this casual cruelty, showing that some acts disturb even the Lord of Hell himself. Robot culture in Futurama reflects twisted versions of human religious beliefs and moral struggles. The Church of Robotology provides structure and rules for robots seeking redemption, while Robot Hell punishes those who fall back into sin. The Robot Devil operates as both punisher and dealmaker, offering robots their heart's desires in exchange for terrible prices that must eventually be paid. Bender's repeated interactions with both the Church and the Devil show how even machines face questions about right and wrong, friendship and selfishness, salvation and damnation. Through these stories, Futurama explored whether robots truly have souls worth saving and whether mechanical beings can choose between good and evil just like humans do. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, life under New York, the sewer mutants, Zoidberg the Decapodian outsider, and how humans treat the people they pushed underground. Deep underground in the sewers and ruins of old New York, a community of mutated humans built their own civilization from garbage and scraps. Meanwhile, on the surface, Dr. Zoidberg struggled as an alien outsider despite his medical credentials. Both the mutants and Zoidberg faced constant discrimination and poverty in a society that refused to treat them as equals. These parallel stories show how humanity in the 31st century creates outcasts from anyone who looks different or comes from the wrong background. The sewer mutants were originally humans working in the sewers of New York City during the early 21st century. In the year 2308, the first destruction of New York City blocked all exits from the sewer system. The workers got trapped underground for hundreds of years with no way to escape. During this time, radioactive waste and toxic chemicals in the sewers mutated them into creatures with horrific deformities. Their DNA changed permanently, and they passed these mutations down to their children. Each mutant developed unique physical characteristics based on the specific toxins they encountered. Some grew extra eyes, others sprouted tentacles instead of arms, while still others developed animal features like horse hooves or reptile skin. By the year 3000, the mutants had dwelled below New York long enough to build their own complete city. They constructed homes, businesses, schools, and civic organizations using objects flushed down from the surface. The mutants proved themselves to be mostly decent people despite their frightening appearances. They established a functioning economy with stores and restaurants that resembled 20th century corporate chains. Businesses in the sewers included Bed Bath & Beneath, Big Mutant Boys, and even a Starbucks location. The mutants ran their own school called MLT Junior High, which was the only public school in the sewers. Being a segregated school, all staff and students were mutants. A teacher named Dwayne taught the young mutants, though the school was eventually destroyed during a motorized sewer race accident. The mutants also built cultural institutions to maintain their society. They had their own library, though it consisted of nothing but crumpled pornography and books by Ayn Rand. They practiced their own religion involving worship of an unexploded nuclear bomb, though, according to a mutant named Violet, nobody was very observant, and it was mainly a Christmas and Easter thing. The nuclear bomb sat on an altar in their cathedral as an obvious reference to the movie Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Despite these efforts at normal life, the mutants remained trapped in deplorable conditions far below the surface. The mutants survived primarily as scavengers, relying heavily on things that New Yorkers flushed down toilets. They collected garbage and discarded items to build their homes and supply their needs. The mutants also worked as sewer maintenance workers, keeping the various pipes and waste chutes functioning properly for the surface dwellers. The United Mutant Scholarship Fund financed a university where mutants learned to fix sewers and maintain the underground infrastructure. Wealthy surface dwellers like Mrs. Astor funded these educational programs, but their real goal was simply keeping the mutants busy with menial labor. The upper class feared that if mutants had free time, they would start demanding equal rights and access to the surface. The segregation of mutants was enforced by law for generations. Mutants were forbidden from living on the surface or spending any extended time in sunlight. The government hid the existence of sewer mutants from most surface humans until the year 3010. If a mutant needed to visit the surface for any reason, they had to obtain a one-day surface permit from City Hall. Since there was almost no contact between humans and mutants, getting these permits proved nearly impossible. Any mutant caught living illegally on the surface faced immediate banishment back to the sewers. Surface humans referred to mutants as inferior genetic scum and treated them with open contempt. Police officers would tell mutants to get back in the sewer and call them weirdies. Turanga Leela's parents, Morris and Munda, lived in this underground world. Morris had one eye, gray hair, and a sideways mouth, while Munda had one eye, a donkey's tail, and octopus tentacles for arms instead of human limbs. When their daughter Leela was born in 2975, she came out as the least mutated mutant ever recorded. Except for having only one eye and purple hair, Leela looked completely human. The medical professional at her birth called her the least mutated mutant they had ever seen. This gave Morris and Munda an idea for giving their daughter a better life than the horrible, degrading existence of a sewer mutant. The parents made a painful decision to abandon their newborn on the steps of the Cookieville Minimum Security Orphanarium. Munda had a doctorate degree in exolinguistics, which she used to write a note in Alienese alien language. The note said, "Your parents love you very much," but it was never properly translated by anyone at the orphanarium. The mutants disguised Leela as an alien rather than a mutant, knowing that aliens received much better treatment than mutants in 31st century society. Both parents swore they would rather die than let their daughter know the shameful truth of her mutant origin. They watched over Leela in secret from the sewers beneath the orphanarium, leaving her presence and secretly helping her throughout her childhood and adult life. For years, Leela believed she was a Cyclopean alien and never suspected her true heritage. She kept her parents' bracelet without knowing where it came from or what it meant. When Leela eventually found her way into the sewers as an adult, she encountered Morris and Munda, but initially mistook them for murderers. She almost killed her own parents before Fry intervened and revealed the truth. The emotional reunion united Leela with her family for the first time. Her parents explained why they gave her up and how they had watched over her for decades. Despite the pain of abandonment, Leela understood their sacrifice and embraced her mutant heritage. The treatment of mutants came to a head in September 3010, when Leela's secret was exposed at a fancy fundraiser for mutant education. Fry accidentally revealed that Leela was not an alien, but a mutant who had been living illegally on the surface for years. The wealthy surface dwellers reacted with shock and disgust. Mayor Puppenmeyer immediately banished Leela into the sewers, forcing her to leave her job and life behind. Angry at being segregated from normal society, Leela began organizing a revolution. She rallied the mutants together with speeches about demanding equal rights and equal access to the surface. Fry felt guilty for ruining Leela's life, so he jumped into the toxic sewage lake to become a mutant himself. He emerged as a grotesque mutant blob covered with 3 eyes, horns, tentacles, and tons of melting flesh. Even Leela could barely stand to touch him in his hideous new form, but his sacrifice touched her heart and showed his solidarity with her people. Leela held a rally for mutant rights where the band Devo played a set for the gathered crowd. The mutants began their revolution by sending toxic ooze to the surface through open manholes. They recruited Bender to bend the main sewage pipe in the West Side Pipeway, which sent all the waste flooding up onto the streets instead of staying underground. Soon, the entire surface of New York was covered in toxic sewage. Leela led the Million Mutant March, bringing an enormous army of mutants up to City Hall. The mutants demanded an end to segregation, equal rights, and equal access to the surface. Some mutants also jokingly demanded the blood of the firstborn children of surface dwellers, though Leela whispered to her fellow mutants that this demand was just something to give up during negotiations. Mrs. Astor ordered her butler to fire a sewage-seeking missile at the protesting mutants. The missile missed and hit Madison Cube Garden instead, releasing a massive tidal wave of sewage that rushed toward the mutants. Fry used the Quantum Force Gemerald to part the wave of sewage like Moses parting the Red Sea. This dramatic act saved the mutants and gave Fry a chance to tell an important story. Deep in the sewers, the crew had discovered the wreckage of the Land Titanic, a luxury land vehicle that sank into the street in 2912 after striking a mailbox. Mrs. Astor's husband was among the passengers believed dead. Fry revealed that there were mutants working below deck in the sewage section when the ship began sinking. An elderly mutant woman came forward and explained that her mother had tried to get her onto a life vehicle when disaster struck. Mr. Astor gave up his seat so the mutant mother and child could escape, sacrificing his own life to save them. This revelation showed that Mr. Astor had treated mutants with dignity and compassion. Fry told Mrs. Astor that if she truly wanted to honor her husband's memory, she should treat mutants the same way he did. Moved by this story, Mrs. Astor convinced Mayor Puppenmeyer to finally grant mutants their freedom. In September 3010, the mayor officially pronounced mutants free to walk on the surface with equal rights as regular citizens. The Devolution Revolution ended segregation and brought justice to a people who had suffered underground for centuries. Most mutants chose to remain in their sewer homes even after gaining surface rights, comfortable with the lives they had built below ground. While the mutants fought for recognition as degraded humans, Dr. Jonathan Alfred Zoidberg struggled as an alien outsider on the surface. Zoidberg was a decapodian, a crustacean-like species from the sandy beach planet Decapod 10. His appearance resembled a lobster or crab, with lobster claws, mouth tentacles, a hard exoskeleton, a fin on top of his head, 4 hearts, 2 stomachs, and a complex system of mostly redundant internal organs. Decapodians had bizarre customs that seemed completely alien to humans. When they entered their mating phase, called the frenzy, their behavior was controlled by the tiny brain in their rumps. After mating, Decapodians died, making reproduction a fatal final act. Zoidberg spoke with a heavy Yiddish accent and used English grammar resembling stereotypical speech of Jewish people from the northeastern United States. His character parodied Jewish culture while being a shellfish, creating an ironic joke, since shellfish are not kosher in Jewish dietary law. Zoidberg moved to Earth to practice medicine after giving up on his childhood dream of working in show business as a comedian or song and dance man. His parents pushed him into becoming a doctor despite his lack of interest in medicine. This forced career choice became a source of misery throughout his life. Despite calling himself a doctor and an expert on human anatomy, Zoidberg was completely incompetent at treating human patients. He frequently confused basic human physiology and performed surgeries with disastrous results. He mistook Fry for a woman when they first met, calling him young lady. He confused Fry with Bender on multiple occasions. Zoidberg attempted to treat humans the same way he would treat his own species, which obviously did not work. He once removed a patient's skeleton thinking it was the problem. He prescribed horrific treatments that made conditions worse rather than better. His medical incompetence was aggravated by his absolute confidence that he knew what he was doing. Zoidberg lived in extreme poverty despite being a doctor, completely inverting the stereotype of doctors as wealthy, respected professionals. He was frequently homeless and lived in the dumpster behind the Planet Express building. Zoidberg admitted openly that he lived in garbage and searched through dumpsters for food and shelter. When the Earth government gave every citizen a $300 tax refund, Zoidberg thought this small amount made him rich. His complete lack of understanding about money and economics kept him permanently broke. He once sold all his company stock for a sandwich, then let the sandwich go moldy in his coat pocket before eating it. Another time, he found $8 million and immediately bet it all on roulette, letting it ride until he lost everything. The Planet Express crew treated Zoidberg with constant abuse and disrespect. Hermes Conrad openly insulted him, threatened to dock his pay, and referred to him as practically a slave. In one movie, Zoidberg yelled that Fry was the only crew member who had never struck him, showing that everyone else had physically hit him at some point. Several times Zoidberg did something wrong and exclaimed, "Don't hit me," in anticipation of violence. His co-workers hated him and made this hatred known through cruel jokes and mean treatment. They excluded him from activities and showed disgust at his smell, his messy eating habits, and his general presence. Despite this abuse, Zoidberg desperately wanted their friendship and approval. Zoidberg stayed at Planet Express because of a life debt to Professor Farnsworth. In the year 2927, Zoidberg and Farnsworth went on a mission to kill a Tritonian Yeti for Mom. During the mission, a Tritonian Yeti attacked Zoidberg. Farnsworth saved Zoidberg's life by killing the Yeti, but got scratched in the process. Farnsworth feared he had contracted hypermalaria, a painful, fatal, incurable disease that could strike instantly or remain dormant for years. He asked Zoidberg to perform a mercy killing if he ever showed symptoms of the disease. Grateful for having his life saved, Zoidberg agreed to stay with Farnsworth and fulfill this task when needed. This arrangement explained why Zoidberg remained employed despite his incompetence. Zoidberg considered Hermes his best friend, despite Hermes constantly bullying him. Zoidberg mistakenly believed that Hermes' special attention and insults showed that Hermes cared enough to interact with him. This pathetic misunderstanding of friendship showed how lonely and desperate Zoidberg felt. He tried constantly to prove himself trustworthy and nice toward other people, but the ostracism he received from society made him miserable. Zoidberg was shown to eat garbage, clothing, fish bones, wood, and chess pieces. He habitually consumed things not considered food by humans, including an entire Earth flag. This eating of the flag later caused Earth to be enslaved by the Decapodians, who overreacted to the supposed insult and demanded Zoidberg's execution. Despite being lonely and poor, Zoidberg eventually found some happiness. He found love with a woman who had no sense of smell. Overcoming his terrible odor problem, he became a national hero after helping save Earth from a Decapodian invasion. He proved medically competent when treating alien races instead of humans. Most importantly, Zoidberg learned to find satisfaction in his humble circumstances. After losing millions of dollars gambling, he remained unfazed because he had already enjoyed the experience of being rich for a short time. Years of horrible poverty made Zoidberg one humble lobster who appreciated small pleasures and simple friendships. The parallel stories of the sewer mutants and Zoidberg reveal deep truths about 21st century society. Earth humans created elaborate systems of discrimination to keep different species and mutated humans at the bottom of social hierarchies. The mutants suffered segregation and forced labor despite being human in origin. Zoidberg endured poverty and abuse despite his professional credentials. Both groups faced constant reminders that they were considered inferior and unwanted by normal society. The eventual mutant revolution brought legal equality, though prejudice and economic inequality continued. Zoidberg's acceptance of his circumstances showed how even the most downtrodden beings could find dignity through humility and persistence. These stories asked whether humanity would ever truly treat all beings with equal respect regardless of their appearance or origin. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, we have Galactic Politics and War, the Duop, Zap and Kif, the Omicronian invasions, and what these conflicts reveal about human power in the 31st century. Galactic Politics and War in the 31st century reveal uncomfortable truths about human power and military competence. The Democratic Order of Planets provides the framework for interplanetary cooperation, but incompetent leadership and frequent defeats expose Earth's vulnerability. Captain Zap Brannigan and his assistant Kif Croker represent the military might protecting humanity, yet their failures demonstrate how poorly prepared Earth remains for the threats it faces. The repeated invasions by Omicron Persei 8 show how easily aggressive alien empires can terrorize humanity over the most trivial reasons. These conflicts paint a picture of human power as weak, corrupt, and constantly on the verge of collapse. The Democratic Order of Planets operates as a collective organization where multiple planets pool their military and political resources under a limited shared governance structure. Known commonly by its acronym DUP, this interplanetary alliance functions similarly to the United Nations or the United Federation of Planets from Star Trek. However, DUP proves far less effective than its inspirations in both politics and warfare. The organization maintains an army and fleet of ships designed to defend member worlds from attack and defeat their enemies. DUP's military consists of forces contributed by member planets rather than a single unified force, with Earth appearing as one of the largest military contributors based on fleet compositions shown during various conflicts. DUP's headquarters originally operated from Weehawken in New Jersey on Earth. In the year 3001, DUP finished construction of a new headquarters space station in orbit around the neutral planet to replace their old rundown facilities. During the grand opening ceremony, Captain Zap Brannigan accidentally destroyed this brand new space station with his ship's laser cannon. Instead of using the oversized ceremonial scissors specifically delivered for the ribbon cutting, Brannigan fired his battleship's weapon and obliterated the entire station. After this catastrophic mistake, Dupe reverted to using their previous headquarters back in New Jersey. This incident perfectly illustrated the organization's core problem: incompetent leadership, making stupid decisions with terrible consequences. As of the most recent episodes, Dupe membership includes at least 11 known planets. These member worlds are Amazonia, Amphibios 9, Chapek 9, Decapod 10, Earth, the neutral planet, Nylar 4, Omicron Persei 8, Trisol, Vega 4, and Wormulon. Remarkably, even planets that constantly attack each other remain Dupe members. Omicron Persei 8 belongs to Duop despite repeatedly invading Earth throughout the series. This bizarre situation suggests Dupe members can declare war on each other while still maintaining their membership in the Alliance. The organization also conquered or absorbed 6 additional territories, including Eden 7, the Gandhi Nebula, the Assisted Living Nebula, Spheron 1, Tarantulon 6, and the Octillion system. The president of Duop is Glab, though the extent of real authority held by this position remains unclear. The organization suffers from serious corruption problems. In the movie Into the Wild Green Yonder, Dupe agreed to help President Richard Nixon destroy an entire section of the galaxy to build a giant mini-golf course. This willingness to commit genocide for recreational development shows how morally bankrupt the leadership had become. In a later episode called Zap Gets Cancelled, President Glab explained that Dupe ensures peace across the galaxy through 2 methods: warfare and trickery. They either force planets into submission through military action or trick them into accepting Dupe protection in exchange for giving up their natural resources. When Captain Leela refused to fire weapons that would kill innocent civilians, Duop dishonorably discharged her for defying orders despite commending her heroism. This revealed that Dupe valued blind obedience over moral decision-making. Captain Zap Brannigan serves as the most visible representative of Dupe's military forces. Born on June 30th, 2972, Brannigan holds the rank of 25-star general and commands the flagship Nimbus. His various titles throughout the series include Captain, General Major Webello, Rear Brigadier, and Commodore 64, though his exact rank seems to vary inconsistently. The general public and his superiors view Brannigan as a great military hero famous for numerous victories over hostile aliens. However, anyone who actually knows him recognizes that he is egotistical, incompetent, cowardly, sexist, vain, and profoundly stupid. His crew openly despises him, and only his superiors' obliviousness allows him to continue getting away with disastrous mistakes while maintaining his false hero status. Brannigan was originally intended to be voiced by actor Phil Hartman. However, Hartman was murdered on May 28, 1998 before production began on Futurama. Billy West took over the role, basing his characterization partly on Phil Hartman's voice. The show's creators designed Brannigan to represent what actor William Shatner himself would be like as a starship captain rather than Captain Kirk, the character he played. Executive producer David X. Cohen described Brannigan as half Captain Kirk and half actual William Shatner. West stated that Brannigan's voice was modeled after certain radio announcers who love the sound of their own voice and over-enunciate ending consonants. Despite claiming to be a strategic genius, Brannigan's battle tactics prove impulsive, stupid, and almost always unnecessary. He takes delight in sending his men to their deaths in pointless battles, viewing mass casualties as proof of their loyalty rather than evidence of his incompetence. His most famous victory came against killbots in the Octillion system. Brannigan discovered that each killbot had a preset kill limit programmed into their systems. He won the battle by sending wave after wave of his own men at the killbots until they reached their pre-programmed limit of 1 million kills and shut down. Brannigan celebrated this massacre of his own soldiers as a brilliant strategic victory rather than an atrocity. Brannigan employed similar tactics when defending Earth during the first Omicronian invasion. He ordered all ships under his command to line up and fly directly at the enemy death cannons so as to clog them with wreckage. This suicidal strategy accomplished nothing except getting thousands of Dupe soldiers killed. The fleet stood no chance against the Omicronian mothership. and they only succeeded in accidentally destroying Earth's own Hubble Space Telescope while suffering massive casualties. Brannigan's complete disregard for the lives of his men, combined with his supreme confidence in his own genius, made him one of the most dangerous military leaders in the galaxy. Brannigan enforces something called Brannigan's Law, which forbids interfering with undeveloped planets. This rule parodies Star Trek's Prime Directive. However, Brannigan himself admits he does not pretend to understand his own law, he merely enforces it. He even fails to uphold it on multiple occasions, showing that his principles remain as flexible as his intelligence remains absent. Brannigan claims to suffer from a learning disorder that he calls sexlexia, which he describes as a disturbingly erotic learning disability. This may simply be a pickup line rather than an actual condition, as nothing about Brannigan's behavior suggests genuine disability beyond his general stupidity. Only once did Brannigan's incompetence result in personal consequences. After destroying Dupe's new headquarters with his ship's laser, he faced a court-martial. During the trial, various characters from previous episodes sat on the jury. Leela testified against him, calling him the sorriest captain she had ever seen. Under cross-examination, Brannigan attempted to discredit her by forcing her to confess their one-night stand. The jury quickly found Brannigan guilty. He then unjustly claimed the disaster was mostly the fault of his assistant Kif Croker. Both Brannigan and Kif were stripped of all titles and dishonorably discharged from dupe service. Unable to find employment, the pair wandered the streets until arriving at the Planet Express building seeking work. Professor Farnsworth hired them because he believed Brannigan's presence would be good for the company's public image, despite Leela's objections. While working at Planet Express, Brannigan convinced Fry and Bender to mutiny against Leela and take control of the delivery ship. He then tried to pilot the ship into the neutral planet's government building in a kamikaze attack. Brannigan felt most hostile toward neutral parties, explaining that with enemies you know where they stand, but with neutrals who knows what they think. This attitude sickened him so much that he wanted to commit suicide just to attack them. Leela regained control of the ship before impact, saving everyone from Brannigan's insane plan. She then testified at a hearing that Brannigan was an amazing hero who saved everyone, lying to get him and Kif reinstated in dupe so they would leave Planet Express and stay out of her life. Lieutenant Kif Croker serves as Brannigan's long-suffering assistant and fourth lieutenant on the dupe starship Nimbus. Kif is a short, thin, green-skinned amphibious alien from the planet Amphibios 9. In early episodes, his frustration with Brannigan's arrogance, incompetence, and lack of personal boundaries turned him into a disaffected, indifferent, sardonic lackey. As the series progressed, Kif's personality developed into something more emotional, tender, and sweet-natured. Brannigan thinks of Kif as his best friend and loyal confidant, whereas Kif sees Brannigan as an incompetent, vain buffoon. Kif went so far as to call him a jackass in their first episode together. Despite this mutual contempt, Kif seemingly has some loyalty to Brannigan, continuing to associate with him even after Brannigan caused him to be court-martialed. Brannigan treats Kif like a slave, making his job the second most humiliating position in existence. Brannigan makes Kif do degrading tasks like shaving his armpit while he bathes. He constantly blames Kif when things go wrong and tells him to prepare to take the blame before disasters even happen. Despite this terrible treatment, Brannigan occasionally gives Kif advice about romance and personal matters, though this advice usually proves terrible. The dynamic between them provides dark comedy while revealing how Dupe's command structure tolerates abuse and incompetence at the highest levels. The Nimbus serves as the flagship of the Dupe fleet under Brannigan's command. This extremely large vessel can blockade or besiege entire planets single-handedly, and transport armies large enough to pacify worlds without any support vessels. The ship designation is BP-1729. The Nimbus parodies the Enterprise from Star Trek, the original series. At one point, the Decapodians destroyed the Nimbus during an invasion, but it was either rapidly rebuilt or replaced by another ship that received the same name. The ship suffered severe damage again in the movie Bender's Big Score, only to be repaired within a month and return fully operational in The Beast with 1 billion backs. The repeated invasions by Omicron Persei 8 demonstrate Earth's weakness despite dupe protection. Omicron Persei 8 is a planet situated approximately 1,000 light-years from Earth, orbiting the star Omicron Persei. The planet's surface consists mainly of deserts. It serves as the homeworld and capital of the warlike Omicronians, who represent the single greatest threat Earth and the entire democratic order of planets face. The rulers of Omicron Persei 8 are Emperor and his wife Nudend. LRR was born on October 19, 2925, and wears a red cape over his brownish reptilian body. Omicronians stand around 8 feet tall with reptilian characteristics. Their skin ranges in color from greenish yellow to dark brown with yellow eyes containing oval pupils. They eat in enormous quantities and are not particularly picky eaters, having been known to swallow humans and orangutans whole. The male's horns act as their reproductive organs, with large horns signifying a powerful male. Omicronians begin life in an immature larval state, resembling fried shrimp. Billions of these larvae get placed in pits on nursery planets. As they mature, they exhibit rapid development of sentience, instinctively knowing how to speak once reaching a certain developmental stage. The Omicronians possess technology far more advanced than that of the human race, as evidenced by their battleships and weaponry. They know the secret to immortality, but refuse to share it with humanity. Despite this technological superiority, the Omicronians remain obsessed with 20th century Earth television. Radio waves from Earth take 1,000 years to reach Omicron Persei 8. So Omicronians in the year 3000 watch television broadcasts from the year 2000 as if they were current programming. This time, delay creates absurd situations where Omicronians become emotionally invested in shows that ended a millennium ago on Earth. The first Omicronian invasion of Earth occurred in the year 3000 because Fry accidentally knocked Fox off the air in 1999. When Fry and the Planet Express crew visited Monument Beach on Labor Day, the Omicronians launched their invasion fleet. Their leader, demanded that Earth produce the one called McNeil, referring to Jenny McNeil, the main character of Single Female Lawyer. The Omicronians were furious that they missed the series finale because the broadcast cut off before showing how the episode ended. President McNeil feared for his own safety and ordered Zap Brannigan to lead an assault against the invaders. Brannigan enlisted the Planet Express crew and thousands of other ships, turning on the robots' patriotism circuits to force their participation. However, they only succeeded in destroying the Hubble Space Telescope while suffering heavy casualties. The dupe fleet stood no chance against the Omicronian mothership. The Omicronians began systematically destroying Earth's monuments one after another until humanity agreed to recreate the finale of Single Female Lawyer. The Planet Express crew performed a live recreation of the show with minimal rehearsal. During a commercial break, Fry explained to Leela that people watch television for familiar, comfortable situations, not clever, unexpected developments. Ellerer overheard this and publicly agreed with Fry's assessment. Fry quickly wrote an ending where Professor Farnsworth playing the judge character died, leaving Jenny McNeil single again. The Omicronians gave the episode a grade of C+, declaring it good enough to spare the planet, though not good enough to receive the secret of immortality. Fry blamed Zoidberg's overacting for the mediocre grade. The aliens departed Earth to watch a 1,000-year-old Jay Leno monologue, satisfied that everything returned to normal just like in a good television series. The second Omicronian invasion occurred when humans began eating Omicronian young. The larval Omicronians tasted delicious and became extremely popular when sold under the brand name Poplars by the fast food franchise Fishy Joe's. Nobody realized these were actually Omicronian children until they started developing sentience and speaking. When LRR discovered that Earth was eating billions of his species' offspring, he launched another invasion to stop this atrocity and punish humanity. One young Omicronian named Junior survived being eaten and begged his elders to show mercy to the humans, successfully ending the invasion before more bloodshed occurred. The third Omicronian invasion was actually fake. LR's wife, Nid ND, became fed up with his lack of motivation to conquer other worlds. On his birthday, LR reluctantly invaded Earth to please his wife. However, he arrived during Comic-Con 3010 and was mistaken for a costume contest participant. Dejected by this reception, Ellerer returned home, where 90 kicked him out for his failure. LRR came back to Earth, seeking shelter at Planet Express. The crew diagnosed his problems as symptomatic of a midlife crisis. Following Bender's advice rather than Leela's, Lur got plastic surgery, flashy new clothes, and went to clubs to meet new women. He eventually wanted to win back Nidend, so Leela and the crew helped him stage a fake invasion using a broadcast similar to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio drama. Nunadi was fooled, but so were Earth's military forces, who immediately surrendered the entire planet to LRR. He then forced Earth's citizens into slavery until Nuna discovered the deception. The fourth Omicronian invasion occurred in 3013 when LRR's son Junior needed to earn a planetary invasion merit badge. Ironically, Junior was one of the few surviving Poplars who escaped being eaten during the second invasion. His invasion proved extremely amateurish. LR's spaceship simply dropped Junior off on the White House lawn where he nervously rang the front doorbell and stammered out his announcement to President Nixon. Junior was so anxious he could barely speak, forcing Nixon to ask him to speak up when demanding Earth's surrender. Nixon immediately agreed to surrender rather than fighting, summoning Zap Brannigan to sign the surrender agreement. In retaliation for this embarrassing defeat, Nixon imposed an embargo on Omicron Persei 8, forbidding trade and communications with other planets. This blockade included all Earth television transmissions, finally cutting off the Omicronians' access to their beloved 20th century programming. These repeated invasions revealed fundamental weaknesses in human power during the 31st century. Earth could barely defend itself against a single alien empire located 1,000 light-years away. The Omicronians launched 4 separate invasions over trivial reasons like missing a television finale, eating alien children by accident, attempting to impress a spouse, and earning a merit badge. Each time, Earth either surrendered immediately or suffered catastrophic military defeats before finding non-military solutions. The dupe forces led by Brannigan proved completely ineffective at protecting Earth from determined attackers. Humanity survived only through luck, diplomacy, and the Omicronians' own lack of commitment to sustained warfare. Dupe's military record across all conflicts painted a picture of an organization barely competent enough to survive. Their campaigns against weak opponents, like the pacifists of the Gandhi Nebula and the retiree people of the Assisted Living Nebula, resulted in victories, but wars against serious threats like the Omicronians and Decapodians ended in defeat. The defense of Earth from the Decapodian invasion failed just as badly as the Omicronian invasions. Only when facing opponents weaker than themselves did dupe forces manage to win battles. The corruption, incompetence, and military weakness displayed by dupe and its forces revealed uncomfortable truths about human power in the 31st century. Despite advanced technology and membership in an interplanetary alliance, Earth remained vulnerable to attack by any aggressive empire willing to commit resources to invasion. The organization meant to protect humanity operated more like a protection racket than a defensive alliance, extracting resources from weaker planets, while failing to defend stronger members from attack. Leadership positions went to incompetent egotists like Brannigan, who viewed their own soldiers as disposable resources rather than lives worth protecting. The galactic political order maintained an unstable peace through threat of mutually assured destruction rather than genuine cooperation or strength. Humanity survived in this dangerous universe not through power or wisdom, but through luck and the reluctance of stronger species to commit to their conquest. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the time machine that only moves forward, the far future fossil record, and the closed loop of the late Philip J. Fry. In the year 3010, Professor Farnsworth finished building a time machine with one specific limitation that made it different from every other time travel device in the universe. The machine could only move forward through time, never backward. The professor designed it this way on purpose to avoid creating time paradoxes or doing something he described as disgusting, like sleeping with your own grandmother. Fry had already done exactly that in a previous adventure, becoming his own grandfather, so the professor wanted to make sure nobody could repeat that mistake. The forward-only design meant anyone who climbed inside could watch the future unfold, but could never return to their original time using that machine alone. The time machine looked similar to classic science fiction designs, with a control lever that resembled a steamship engine order telegraph. The professor planned a simple test run where the machine would jump forward exactly 1 minute into the future, just enough to prove the technology worked without causing any problems. Fry agreed to help test the device along with Bender, even though he had an extremely important appointment that same evening. Leela had invited Fry to a fancy birthday dinner at a restaurant called Cavern on the Green, located deep underground in a cave filled with natural rock formations. Fry promised he would not be late this time because their relationship had suffered from his constant tardiness at previous dates. Fry prepared for both the test and his date by purchasing a record-your-own-message birthday card for Leela. He planned to film his message inside the time machine and give her the card at dinner. However, when the professor, Fry, and Bender climbed into the machine for the test, something went wrong immediately. The professor slipped and accidentally moved the control lever much farther than intended. Instead of traveling 1 minute into the future, the machine launched them forward almost 7,000 years to the year 10,000. During the sudden acceleration, Fry's birthday card flew out the window of the time machine and disappeared into the time stream. Back in the year 3010, everyone waited for different things to happen. Leela sat alone at Cavern on the Green while a waiter explained the restaurant's history. The unique stalactites and stalagmites throughout the cave had formed over millions of years through mineral-rich water dripping slowly from pores in the ceiling. Each drop added a tiny amount of rock to the formations below, building them up century after century. Leela waited and waited, but Fry never arrived for their dinner date. Meanwhile, Hedonisbot threw his bachelor party that same night. The party ended in disaster when a nuclear-powered robot stripper experienced a meltdown and exploded, killing everyone at the party except Hedonismbot himself. Leela saw a news report about the explosion and assumed Fry had gone to the party instead of meeting her. So she felt both angry at being stood up again and sad because she thought Fry had died. In the year 10,000, Fry, Bender, and the professor emerged from the time machine to find New York in complete ruins. The entire city had been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times over the 7,000 years they had skipped. Primitive humans lived among the wreckage, carrying spears and wearing simple clothing. When Fry saw the remains of the Statue of Liberty buried in the sand, he realized Earth had experienced multiple apocalypses. After the original humans destroyed themselves, apes took over and ruined their own civilization, then birds did the same, followed by cows and possibly slugs. The professor found evidence suggesting Earth had suffered through at least 5 separate nuclear wars during those thousands of years. The professor came up with a plan to get home. Since they could not travel backward in time, they would keep jumping forward until they reached a future era where scientists had invented a backward time machine. Once they found that technology, they could use it to return to their original time in 3010. Bender threw several books into a fire to keep warm while they discussed this plan. One of the books he burned had a title written in alien language that translated to "Backwards Time Travel Made Easy," but nobody noticed this ironic detail. The 3 travelers climbed back into the time machine and began jumping through different eras of Earth's future. A song played during their journey through time, describing the strange civilizations they encountered. In the year 105,105, they found a third ice age had covered the planet. Eskimos lived on the frozen surface and chased after the time machine, riding on seals while firing handguns. In the year 252,525, Earth had regressed to a medieval society with castles and knights. The only technology that existed was described as a rusty sword used for practicing proctology. A knight riding an ostrich stabbed Bender in the back with a sword before they jumped forward again. In the year 351,120, the entire planet had flooded and become an aquatic world. A creature that looked like a merman tried to lure them closer, but the merman turned out to be just the lure attached to a giant bloodthirsty shrimp monster hiding underwater. They continued forward to the year 1.5 million. By this time, intelligent giraffes had evolved and conquered humanity. The giraffes forced humans to serve them as slaves, making them pay for destroying all the leaves on the treetops. The humans and giraffes both lived in castles that had been rebuilt to accommodate the giraffes' long necks. This represented the fourth known medieval age in Earth's history. The machine kept moving forward through time. In the year 5 million, humanity had diverged into two separate species, similar to the Eloi and Morlocks from the novel The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Small purple-skinned humanoids lived on the surface, while large primitive creatures called dumbblocks lived underground in savage conditions. The year 10 million brought them to a future similar to the Terminator films. Machines had rebelled against their human creators, and now hunted the remaining humans in an endless war. The machines had built mountains of human skulls and created lakes of blood across the landscape. A human soldier explained that humans had built the machines to make life easier, but the machines turned against them. Bender absolutely loved this future and wanted to stay, but the professor and Fry refused because they found the genocide horrifying. They forced the time machine forward despite Bender's protests. In the year 50 million, they discovered a paradise inhabited almost entirely by beautiful women. Males had become extremely rare in this far future, making even dumb and old males highly desirable to the female population. The women had finally invented backwards time travel technology and offered to share it with the travelers after a fertility banquet. This seemed like the perfect solution to their problem. However, Bender had become furious that they had stayed in every future Fry, and the professor liked, but refused to stay in the robot-dominated future he preferred. In an act of revenge, Bender grabbed the time machine's control lever and launched them forward again before they could obtain the backwards time machine technology. The machine jumped forward to the year 1 billion. When they stepped outside, they found a completely dead world. All life on Earth had gone extinct. No animals, no plants, no water remained, only dust and barren rock. The professor declared this the most hopeless moment they had faced because they had reached the absolute end of everything. The sun had grown hotter over the billion years, making the planet uninhabitable for any living organism. Fry walked alone through the desert of the dead planet, feeling dejected and hopeless. During his walk, he found the ruins of the cavern on the Green Restaurant, where he was supposed to meet Leela for her birthday dinner. Inside the cave, Fry discovered something that changed everything. Words had formed in the rock on the floor of the cave, made entirely from stalagmites. The message had been created by water dripping for millions of years in very specific patterns. The message from Leela read, "Dear Fry, our time together was short, but it was the best time of my life. Leela." Fry wept when he read this because he finally understood what had happened back in 3010. Back in 3010, 20 years after the time travelers disappeared, the timeline had continued without them. The year became 3030, and Leela had taken over Planet Express after the professor vanished. She turned the company into a thriving and massively successful business, but she still missed Fry terribly. She began dating Cubert, the professor's clone son, because he reminded her of Fry, though Cubert himself seemed surprised by this development. In 3050, 40 years after Fry disappeared, Leela had become an old woman. She had married and divorced Cubert after realizing he was nothing like Fry. Cubert started dating Amy, whose head now sat on a robotic body. One day, in 3050, something unexpected happened. Fry's birthday card suddenly appeared out of thin air and fell from the ceiling, hitting old Leela and knocking her to the floor. The card had been traveling through time for exactly 40 years since it flew out the time machine window in 3010. When Leela played the message on the card, she finally learned the truth. Fry had not abandoned her or gone to the bachelor party. He had been trapped in a time machine accident. Leela realized she had spent 40 years angry at Fry for something that was not his fault. She had wasted her entire life staying mad at someone who had desperately wanted to make it to their dinner date. Leela went to the abandoned and closed cavern on the Green Restaurant. She took out her laser pistol and shot holes in the ceiling of the cave in a very specific pattern. The holes she created would allow water to drip through for millions of years, slowly building stalagmites that would form words on the floor. She left her message for Fry, knowing that if he somehow survived into the far future, he might visit the ruins of the restaurant and find her words. This act of hope across impossible spans of time represented her love for him and her regret at how she had spent her life. Back in the year 1 billion, Fry returned to the professor and Bender at the time machine after reading Leela's message. He told them he had lived a good life despite everything that happened. Then Fry suggested they do something completely unexpected. Since they had already traveled 1 billion years into the future and lost everything, why not keep going forward and watch the universe itself come to an end? The professor and Bender agreed to this plan. They grabbed a 6-pack of beer, climbed into the time machine, and set the controls to maximum speed. They watched as the sun expanded into a red giant star that consumed and destroyed Earth completely. The sun then collapsed into a white dwarf. One by one, all the other stars in the universe went through similar processes, exploding and fading away. The universe expanded further and further until the galaxies moved so far apart that no light could travel between them anymore. Eventually, even the last proton in the entire universe decayed into nothing. They sat in complete darkness with absolutely nothing left in existence except themselves and the time machine. After sitting in the dark for a while feeling bored, they wondered what to do next. Suddenly, without any warning, a tremendous explosion occurred right in front of them. The professor recognized it immediately as a second Big Bang. A new universe was being born from the death of the old one. The professor realized that time must work in a cycle. When one universe ends completely, another identical universe begins immediately after. They watched as the new universe formed following the exact same pattern as the previous one. First, the Big Bang created all matter and energy. Then the sun formed, followed by Earth and the moon. Life began in the oceans. Creatures crawled onto land. Dinosaurs evolved and then went extinct. Human civilization developed through all the same stages of history that had occurred in the original universe. The professor made a quick stop during this journey through the recreation of history. He aimed a weapon out the time machine window and fired at Adolf Hitler to prevent World War II. He successfully shot Hitler and removed him from history. They continued forward, knowing they could now return home to the year 3010 by simply continuing forward through time until they reached that year again in this new, nearly identical universe. As they approached 3010, the professor slipped on the controls just like he had during the original accident. They overshot their target year and ended up in 10,000 again. This meant they had to go around through the entire cycle of universal death and rebirth one more time. The professor, Fry, and Bender traveled forward again, watching the second universe collapse and die, followed by a third Big Bang that created a third universe. On this second trip through time, Bender controlled the time machine instead of the professor. When they passed through the recreation of history, the professor tried to shoot Hitler again. This time, he missed Hitler completely and accidentally hit Eleanor Roosevelt instead, creating a different change to history. They kept moving forward toward the year 3010. This third universe had one strange difference from the previous universes. Everything appeared to be about 10 feet lower in elevation than before. When the time machine arrived at the moment just before the original time travel accident, it appeared 10 feet above the ground, hovering over the earlier versions of Fry, Bender, and the professor who were about to enter their time machine. The time machine from the future fell those 10 feet and crushed the duplicates to death. This solved the time travel paradox. Only one version of each traveler could exist at this moment, and it had to be the versions who had journeyed through 2 complete universal cycles. Fry rushed to the cavern on the green restaurant to meet Leela. He arrived exactly on time for their birthday dinner. After they finished eating, Fry apologized for losing the birthday card he had bought for her. Leela told him she did not care about cards. What she would always remember was their time together. They stood on a bridge, looking up at the stars, while Bender dug a hole underneath the bridge and buried the bodies of the 3 duplicates they had crushed when they arrived. The forward-only time machine and the closed time loop created by traveling through the death and rebirth of the universe demonstrated several important ideas about time and reality. First, it showed that time itself continues even when the universe ends. The time machine kept counting years, even after every proton decayed and nothing physical remained anywhere. This suggested that time was a dimension separate from matter and energy. Second, it proved that each universe was nearly identical to the previous one, following a deterministic pattern where the same events happened over and over. Every person was born again, made the same choices, and lived the same life in each cycle. However, small changes could occur. The different elevations between universes meant they were not perfectly identical copies. Also, the time travelers themselves created changes. The professor killed Hitler in one universe and Eleanor Roosevelt in another, meaning those universes would develop slightly different histories. The time travelers had become anomalies who existed outside the normal pattern. Fry, in particular, had become something unprecedented in the cosmos. He was born in one universe, but now lived in a different universe that simply resembled his original home. He was no longer subject to the normal rules that governed everyone else because he had traveled through the complete destruction and recreation of all existence. The fossil record that Leela created took millions of years to form. Water dripped through the holes she shot in the cave ceiling. Each drop carried tiny amounts of dissolved minerals. When the drops hit the floor, they left behind microscopic deposits of stone. Over thousands of years, those microscopic deposits accumulated into visible stalagmites. Over millions of years, the stalagmites grew tall enough to form recognizable letters. Over hundreds of millions of years, the letters became complete words. By the time Fry arrived 1 billion years later, the message had fully formed through this incredibly slow geological process. This showed that even acts of love could be preserved across unimaginable spans of time through natural processes and patience. The closed loop created by the time machine meant that everything that happened was both the cause and effect of everything else. Fry being late led to testing the time machine. Testing the time machine led to the accident. The accident led to finding Leela's message. Finding Leela's message led to watching the universe end. Watching the universe end led to returning through a new universe. Returning through the new universe led to arriving on time. Arriving on time meant Fry was not late. But if Fry was not late, then none of the events that caused him to arrive on time could have happened. This paradox was resolved by the travelers crushing their duplicates, ensuring only one timeline continued forward. The episode demonstrated that even when facing the complete destruction of everything, meaning could still exist. Fry, Bender, and the professor watched all the stars die and the last atoms decay, but they found beauty in witnessing those cosmic events. They accepted their situation calmly instead of panicking, showing that humans could find peace even when confronting the ultimate end. The message Leela left proved that love and connection mattered more than the physical universe itself. Her words survived longer than all of human civilization, longer than the Earth, longer than the sun, lasting until the final moments before absolute nothing. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, we have parallel universes in boxes, the coin flip realities, the many benders, and what the show confirms as hard canon about the Futurama multiverse. Professor Farnsworth conducted an experiment that nearly killed him in a spectacular series of explosions. During the chaos, while surrounded by fire and debris, he shouted desperate prayers to multiple deities, including Buddha, Zeus, God, and even Satan, claiming the devil owed him a favor. When the explosions finally stopped, the professor emerged technically alive but shaken. The experiment had created something he considered too dangerous to keep around. He placed the results inside a yellow cardboard box roughly the size of a shoebox and ordered the Planet Express crew to help him destroy it by hurling the box into the thermonuclear inferno of the sun. The professor strictly forbade anyone from looking inside the box under any circumstances, warning that whatever existed in there was probably beyond their comprehension. He used a hammer to physically discourage both Zoidberg and Hermes when they showed curiosity about the box's contents. The professor assigned Leela to guard the box overnight until they could take it to the sun the next day. However, his dramatic warnings about never looking inside only made everyone more curious about what the box contained. After her shift ended, Leela sat alone with the box and felt overwhelmed by curiosity. She decided to flip a coin to determine whether she should look inside. The coin came up in favor of opening the box, so she honored the result and looked in. Leela immediately noticed something strange. The box appeared much deeper inside than its external dimensions suggested, going down far beyond what should have been possible for such a small container. Leela leaned in closer to examine this impossible depth and accidentally fell into the box. She tumbled through empty space and emerged from a different colored box on the other side, bumping her head on the floor in the process. When she looked around, Leela found herself in what appeared to be the Planet Express conference room, but everything looked different. Fry had black hair instead of orange and wore a green jacket instead of red. A gold-colored Bender walked in looking exactly like the regular Bender except for his metallic finish. Then another Professor Farnsworth entered with an odd scar going completely around his head like he had performed brain surgery on himself. Finally, another Leela with bright red hair came into the room. This second, Leela and everyone else stared at the original Leela in shock. Professor Farnsworth quickly realized what had happened. He had accidentally created a parallel universe inside the box, and now someone from that universe had crossed over into his world. The professor immediately assumed that anyone from a parallel universe must be evil based on science fiction conventions. He ordered his Leela to go through the box into the other universe with a weapon and bring back everyone she could find. The red-haired Leela jumped into the box and emerged in the original universe. She found Zoidberg first and delivered an off-screen karate blow to him. Then she rounded up Fry, Bender, Amy, Zoidberg, and Professor Farnsworth at gunpoint, forcing them all to jump through the box. Both Planet Express crews now stood together in the same universe facing their alternate selves. The two professors immediately began arguing about which of them had created the other's universe. Both claimed to have invented the box that contained the parallel reality. They eventually realized something remarkable had happened. Both versions of Professor Farnsworth had conducted the exact same experiment at the exact same time in their respective universes. This simultaneous accident in two different realities had created boxes that each contained the other universe. Universe A contained a box with Universe 1 inside it, while Universe 1 contained a box with Universe A inside it. Neither universe came first or created the other. They had both always existed, and the boxes simply created gateways between them. The crews decided to name the universes to avoid confusion. Leela from Universe A suggested calling them Universe A and Universe B. However, the crew from the other universe objected to being assigned the inferior letter B, so they compromised on calling the universes Universe A and Universe 1 instead. As the two groups talked, they discovered the key difference between the universes. Every coin flip that came up heads in one universe came up tails in the other universe, and vice versa. This single difference in random chance had created all the variations between the realities. The coin flip difference had major and minor consequences across both universes. Leela from Universe A explained that she had flipped a coin earlier to decide whether to look in the box. The coin came up telling her to look, so she did. Leela from Universe 1 revealed she had flipped the same coin at the same moment for the same reason, but her coin came up telling her not to look. So she went and got coffee instead, which explained why she had not fallen into the box from her side. Bender discovered this, explained his coloring. At some point, he had flipped a coin to decide his finish color. Bender from Universe A ended up silver gray, while Bender from Universe 1 became gold-plated because the coin landed on the opposite side. The most dramatic difference involved Fry and Leela's relationship. At some earlier point, both versions of Fry had asked their respective Leelas on a date. Both Leelas had flipped coins to decide whether to accept. In Universe A, the coin told Leela to reject Fry, so she made up an excuse about why she could not go out with him. Fry from Universe A mentioned that he later got beaten up at a Neil Diamond concert by a man named Scrunchy. In Universe 1, the exact same coin flip came up with the opposite result. Leela from Universe 1 accepted the date, and the relationship developed successfully. 1 year later, Fry from Universe 1 gave Leela a diamond scrunchie as a gift, and they got married. This meant that in one universe, Fry and Leela were happily married, while in the other universe, they remained friends who had never dated, all because of a single random coin flip years earlier. Professor Farnsworth from Universe 1 revealed another difference caused by coin flips. He had decided to flip a coin to determine whether he should perform experimental brain surgery on himself. The coin in Universe 1 told him to go ahead with the surgery. He cut out his own brain and then put it back in, leaving a scar all the way around his head. When asked about the procedure, he explained that getting the brain out was the easy part, but getting the brain out was the hard part, giggling madly. Professor Farnsworth from Universe A had flipped the same coin about the same surgery, but his coin told him not to do it. so he kept his brain safely inside his skull without any scars. After examining their religious scriptures, both professors announced they had determined that neither universe was actually evil. The crews from both universes had simply made different choices based on random chance, but neither group was inherently bad or good. Just as everyone prepared to return to their home universes, Hermes from Universe 1 walked in with blonde hair. He asked why nobody had destroyed the box yet, since that was the professor's original plan. Professor Farnsworth from Universe 1 explained that he had hidden the box to protect it from destruction now that he knew it contained an entire universe full of people. The two professors suddenly realized the terrible implication. If Hermes from Universe 1 had originally planned to destroy the box, then Hermes from Universe A must also be heading toward the sun at that exact moment to destroy his box. Since Universe 1 existed inside the box that Hermes A planned to throw into the sun, everyone in Universe 1 would die if Hermes A succeeded. The professors rushed to retrieve the box containing Universe A so they could travel through it and stop Hermes A. Professor Farnsworth from Universe 1 had hidden the box inside his personal coelacanth tank, reasoning that only a crazy lobster would look there. When he opened the tank, he discovered the box was gone. The two Zoidbergs had stolen the box. Both versions of Zoidberg had felt unappreciated and ignored by their respective crews, so they teamed up to take revenge by stealing the most important object in either universe. Zoidberg from Universe A placed a slurm bucket on his head like a crown, and Zoidberg from Universe 1 hailed him as king while kissing his foot. Meanwhile, in Universe A, Hermes headed toward the sun carrying the box that contained Universe 1. Hermes from Universe 1 remarked that his counterpart would already be at the sun by now. The two professors desperately tried to recreate the box that would take them to Universe A. However, the experimental accident that created the original boxes proved impossible to reproduce exactly. Every box they made contained a different universe instead of the right one. Just then, both Zoidbergs walked back into the room carrying the stolen box. The crews tried to grab them, but the Zoidbergs panicked and jumped into the box to escape. As they fled, they knocked over a shelf containing all the universe boxes the professors had accidentally created while trying to find Universe A. Boxes spilled everywhere, and the Zoidbergs jumped randomly from one universe to another. Professor Farnsworth from Universe 1 told everyone to grab pieces of wire and tie them to themselves like a trail of breadcrumbs. This way, they could find their way back through the multiple universes while chasing the Zoidbergs. The crews split up and jumped into different boxes, each one leading to a radically different universe. The professors had accidentally created universes that each had a single defining characteristic rather than the subtle differences between Universe A and Universe 1. Amy from Universe 1 jumped into Universe 25, where none of the inhabitants had eyes. When she asked the eyeless crew if they had seen the Zoidbergs, they answered no. Despite having no eyes, the inhabitants understood the concept of sight rather than asking what seeing meant, suggesting they had been born without eyes rather than simply living in a universe where eyes never evolved. The boxes in Universe 25 were white. Fry jumped into Universe 1729, where everyone was a bobblehead version of themselves. The inhabitants said rude and impolite things, and speaking seemed to set their heads bobbling. The boxes in Universe 1729 were pink. The number 1729 referenced the Hardy-Ramanujan number, a mathematical in-joke that appeared in several Futurama episodes. Leela jumped into Universe 31, where everybody was a robot version of themselves. A robot Fry immediately asked Leela on a date. When she rejected him, the robot Fry's head exploded. It was possible, but not confirmed, that robots in Universe 31 existed as organic beings, creating a complete reversal where the normal humans became robots and the normal robots became human. The boxes in Universe 31 were green. The two benders both jumped into Universe 650, which appeared stuck in the ancient Roman period, despite having science advanced enough to create parallel universe boxes. Everyone wore togas, and the architecture matched Roman style. The professor from Universe X5 said, "Quay," which was the Latin equivalent of his usual catchphrase. What? The boxes in Universe X5 were purple, and the number 17 was written in Roman numerals. The Zoidbergs jumped into Universe 420, which was populated by hippies who smoked marijuana. The universe had a smoky haze throughout, and the number 420 referred to common slang for smoking weed. There appeared to be a shortage of boxes in Universe 420, with only one orange-colored box visible. Professor Farnsworth, from Universe 420, wore hippie clothing and had long hair. When the angry professor from Universe A encountered him, the hippie professor offered him a flower in a gesture similar to the famous flower power photograph from Vietnam War protests. Other universes glimpsed but not fully explored included a leprechaun universe populated by leprechauns, a pirate universe populated by pirates, an icy universe where everything froze immediately, a women universe populated primarily by amorous women, and an octopus universe where an octopus attempted to come through the box. The professors finally caught the Zoidbergs and retrieved the box containing Universe A. Everyone jumped through the box and emerged just in time. Hermes from Universe A stood at the ejection port with his finger hovering over the button that would hurl the box into the sun. The crews shouted for him not to press it. Hermes paused for an uncomfortably long time, his eyes darting between the professor and the eject button, before finally deciding not to destroy the box. Both crews returned to their respective universes and said goodbye. Then something remarkable happened at the end. To ensure the safety of both universes, the two professors decided to exchange their universe boxes. They both reached into their respective boxes at the exact same time and grabbed the other universe's box, pulling them through simultaneously. This created an impossible paradox where each universe now contained a box with its own universe inside it. Universe A now had a box containing Universe A, and Universe 1 had a box containing Universe 1. The entirety of Universe A existed within a box owned by the Planet Express crew of Universe A, giving them literal control over their own universe, with the power to cause chaos or even break reality simply by shaking or sitting on the box. When Bender shook the box with Universe A inside it, the shaking caused an earthquake throughout Universe A, even though the box itself was already inside Universe A. When Fry sat on the box to watch television, the entire universe momentarily folded and became compressed and squishy, making everything briefly cramped for everyone in the universe. This created a positive feedback loop where shaking the box should cause increasingly powerful shakes until the universe tore itself apart, but somehow the paradox remained stable. The episode revealed important facts about how the Futurama multiverse worked according to the show's internal rules. Before this episode, only one parallel universe had been confirmed to exist. In an earlier episode called I Dated a Robot, the Planet Express crew visited the edge of the universe where space ended at a literal wall. They looked through coin-operated binoculars at the only parallel universe, which was a cowboy-themed reality where everyone dressed as cowboys and mirrored the actions of their counterparts. When Fry asked if infinite parallel universes existed, Professor Farnsworth firmly stated there were only 2 universes total, not infinite. This established the hard canon that parallel universes were extremely rare. The Farnsworth Parabox episode appeared to contradict this earlier statement by showing many universes. However, the show provided an explanation for this discrepancy. The universes with boxes like Universe 1, Universe 25, Universe 1729, Universe 31, Universe X-Fidei, and Universe 420 had all been accidentally created by the two professors when they tried to recreate the original box. These were not natural parallel universes that had always existed. They were alternate realities manufactured through the professors' experiments. The Cowboy universe remained the only naturally occurring parallel universe, while all the boxed universes were artificial creations made possible by Farnsworth's scientific accident. This meant the professor's original statement about only 2 universes had been correct until he accidentally created all the others. The show confirmed that the primary Futurama universe was called Universe A by its own inhabitants. However, in a later episode called The Beast with a Billion Backs, a cosmic entity named Yivo referred to the main universe as Universe Gamma instead of Universe A. This created a second name for the same reality depending on which beings were naming it. Universe A or Universe Gamma represented the baseline reality where the normal events of Futurama took place. The episode ended with Leela finally accepting Fry's request for a date after years of rejection. When Fry asked her out again, she prepared to flip a coin to decide. However, after everything she had witnessed about how coin flips determined major life choices, Leela decided to stop letting random chance control her decisions. She chose to accept the date without looking at the coin flip result at all, taking control of her own destiny instead of leaving it to probability. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.